Blog Talk Radio.
Dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight to land on the line.
Fans, this is the Rope a Dove Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are live on a Wednesday night, almost a Tuesday night. Hope everybody's doing okay. Obviously, we got a whole lot to talk about, and it's not outside of the ring with fight news or a big announcement. It was a major upset last weekend. Teofimo Lopez, the man who beat the man, Lomachenko, at lightweight at the 135-pound division, got upset by George Kambosos. I mean, I'm still kind of like, wow. I mean, once you start watching the fight and you see how both fighters are not just fighting, right, but their mindset to the fight, it's not that shocking. That first knockdown was shocking. but overall, as that fight dragged on, it was clear as day that Teofimo Lopez is more than likely going to lose that fight. Now, he did score a knockdown. He did make that hell of a run in the 10th round. You do have to give him a lot of credit for that. But for Kambosos, for that to happen in the 10th round and to bounce back in the 11th and 12th like that's what won the fight, really. Both guys hit the canvas. Really fun fight to watch. A lot of drama. And a lot of drama between the rounds, too. And I'm talking about Teofimo Lopez Sr. Obviously, it was a mess. If it wasn't screaming at his Teofimo, right? Just all sorts of different stuff. Calm down but freaking out, just a bunch of variety of stuff that was just mind-blowing. And then when his son, scored the knockdown, then all of a sudden, it's 10th round, they won the fight, they think, and he's over there barely getting back into the ring to help out his son. There's a clip that's going around boxing Twitter, and I think everybody pretty much saw it. Right after the first round, dude gets knocked down. He wasn't hurt, but this whole thing, it was just a little flash knockdown. I mean, he did get up, and he seemed okay, but it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill, oops, I just got knocked down. His head snapped a little bit, But the way his father behaved in the corner was just ridiculous, At one hand, like I said, he's saying, relax, calm down. I told you can't do this. And then he's freaking out. Why haven't you stopped him already? Like, it was just all sorts of stuff going on in that corner. And I really hope Teofimo Lopez gets a new head trainer. You cannot have your father in this scenario. We know the father-son in boxing goes thick and through all this stuff. But even look at Bill Haney and some of the stuff he says online. He still knows that he's not going to be the head trainer. It was bad. I mean, I'm not going to say it was the worst corner I've ever seen because, there's been a lot of bad corners, but this one I felt really bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. Both of them have said a whole lot of stuff the last while now that was just like, where are you at, dude? Like, it just, I don't know. There's just certain things like, and even after the fight, to think that you won 10-2. Are you kidding me? Now, it was a competitive fight. This whole thing that, Kambosos won 9-3 or something, I don't believe that either. It was a really competitive fight. And it was cool that Kambosos, in Brooklyn, or in New York, I should say, at the theater, at the Garden, the Hulu Theater in Madison Square Garden, to be able to, come in from not just out of town, but, out of the country and get the decision. That was dope. I think that's kind of getting lost a little bit in this stuff. But some of the stuff that they said after, the 10-2 stuff, in the interview on Seconds Out, I'll play a clip of that. I mean, the you can just tell the hype goes to your head when you do something great. That happens. That's no big deal. It happens to a lot of people. But some of the things, like I mentioned, him saying, him and his father, this isn't just Junior, but both of them saying that they're going to do 2 million buys, I mean, for this fight, or just any fight. Him and Gervonta wouldn't do 2 million buys. I mean, how many, 1, 2, 3, I mean, there's been 4 fights in the history of boxing that have gone over 2 million, and then he's talking about last June that he was going to bump Mayweather off his date and shit like that. Like, it's just ridiculous. And like I said, after the fight, delusional. Some of the things coming out of Senior's mouth and what he's worried about right now, it's just, and the excuse is piling up. And we remember both of them at the time, for good reason, because Wilder had plenty of excuses too after that second fight. Well, like everybody else, they had plenty to say about that, but now look at them. They're bringing up, oh, dude, it was because we were on the zone. Oh, no, we were too loud. Oh, yeah, no, it's just a bunch of dumb shit, to be honest with you. I mean, we're going to go over it. But anyway, I don't want to just talk about that because, let's be honest, we had another candidate for Fight of the Year right here, Fulton and Figueroa. Another competitive fight. I mean, really competitive. The scorecard's very close in that one in my eyes. I do want to see the rematch. I really do. I think that was a really fun fight. Figueroa, as the fight wore on, started to kind of slow down Fulton. I don't know if slow down is the right term, but he definitely buzzed him and hurt him a little bit and started to take the fight over to where he could catch up because, it did take him a little while to get going, which is no surprise, right? We will talk about some undercard fights as well, but that was a great fight too. And now you look at Fulton, who did get the W. He's had such a nice run, and we now know probably more than likely what his next fight's going to be because Daniel Roman has been, I think it was the WBC and the WBO. He was not. I think it was both those. He was number one, the number one ranked contender at both of them. So they did this joint mandatory, which makes a lot of sense in this scenario because hey, it's a good, it's a solid fight, but you could see where it'd be a little shaky too. You know what I mean? I mean these alphabetical ABC sanctioning belts, they're ridiculous. We all know it. But we are going to recap that. Like I said, talk about some undercard fights. And this is the beauty of it. It just keeps going. We've had such a run. Don't get me wrong. Parts of the summer, late July, August, it took us a while, September. It took us a while to kind of get back going. We had a nice year going in 2021. Then it kind of fell off with postponements and people getting COVID and, just fights falling apart. But then they came back and they were good fights. And we've had plenty of fights of the years down the stretch. So it is really closing strong. And I say that because Gervonta Davis returns against Isaac Cruz. And also Devin Haney probably because JoJo's much fresher than Jorge Linares. Joseph Diaz Jr. is going to take on Devin Haney as well on Saturday. By the way, for those who don't realize it, the Tank fight is Sunday night. Now, it does start an hour early, so it's 7 o'clock Central instead of 8, which is the normal pay-per-view time. Of course, you know, I don't know. I mean, they have college football and NFL to, play a lot of commercials during. I don't know if it's going to be a lot, I should say. But it's going to be a little interesting because not only, the Sunday night in the summer or the Sunday night in the spring or whatever, that makes sense to an extent, especially in the summer, right? But going head-to-head with football on Sunday night, that's kind of interesting. Now, who knows? Maybe there'll be a blowout by the time they get there. We'll see. But we are going to talk about those fights. The undercard for Tank and Cruz, really good pay-per-view undercard on paper anyway. And then, of course, we have some current fight news. We always close the show with a little boxing Twitter segment where we read the tweets of the week and also some fanboy tweets. And also we got to look at the media, too, because sometimes they have the fanboy tweets as well. And, there are some fights that might be in jeopardy. Pan just did a travel ban. So Golovkin, Murata, a couple other fights might be off, but maybe not, though. They may get that special, exemption. Because I believe that a fighter that's going to fight in Japan very soon actually just got there. So a lot of people just assume that 2 fights that they're looking for to close the year in Japan are not going to happen. And it might not be that cut and dry. Let's put it that way. But anyway, if this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. You don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show directly there. Listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find the platform Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, and a whole lot of other places. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. And one more thing. If you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called DirecTV Stream. The prices start as low as $69.99 a month. It's the best of live television and on demand, no annual contract, no hidden fees. If you upgrade to the Choice or Ultimate, that'll give you 3 free months of HBO Max, plus you get to enjoy regional sports networks with no additional fees. And boxing fans, this might interest you. Well, first, Showtime's only $11 on this platform, but if you go all the way to the premiere, you get a free HBO Max and Showtime already included. That's DirecTV Stream. Okay, so before we go too deep into Teofimo Lopez and his father, and I don't want to take it out too much on Junior because he fought a hell of a fight. That wasn't the smartest fight, no, but he was wary there for a while. His eye was all messed up, so he did make a great run, and he showed a lot of heart. I mean, this whole 10-2 shit is just ridiculous, him saying that, he won the fight 10-2. A lot of it has to do with his dad, and some of the stuff that was coming out of his mouth. Like I said, during the fight, some of the stuff, it just blew me away. I couldn't believe he's going from this dude's done. I mean, the first thing he said, hold on, didn't I just say that we're going to hold off on that? We're going to talk about the fights? Hang on. I couldn't believe his son just got knocked down, and the first thing he says was he's done. I was just on the mat. What do you mean he's done? What are you talking about? Anyway, and Lopez, okay, this is part of it. This is before the fight. He says, you're scared, bro. He makes sure the mics can pick it up. When the ref is having him touch his gloves and he's saying, hey, we talked in the dressing room. I want to keep it fair and square and blah, 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 all that stuff before they actually ring the first bell. You got Lopez Sr. saying he's scared, bro. You're scared. It's like, dude, he's in the ring, dude. What do you mean he's scared? He signed the contract. What are you talking about? He's scared, dude. Oh, boy. But anyway, right away, Lopez came out gunning, winging these right hands, trying to hit him with the left hook. And don't get me wrong, he landed big, several big-ass right hands and left hooks, but he was also missing a lot. He was leaving his feet a lot. And, of course, we know he does have that little jump hook and all that and jump lead right, but he was missing pretty bad. And a clean right hand landed right on the button and just dropped him. And I know they said, it was a flash knockdown. There wasn't much. It was a slip. I didn't look at that as a slip. I didn't look like he was super hurt, but I wouldn't call that just some kind of run-of-the-mill. That was barely. That was nothing. That was bullshit. And since we're here, after the first round, before I go and play some other audio after the fight, I mean, this is literally, this is the words he chose to say right when his son just got knocked down. And by the way, that first round could have been 10-9, okay? Kambosos. A lot of people just automatically go 10-8. It didn't have to be. He won the round, no doubt. He landed the best punch. But he did get hit plenty in that first round, I do have to say. But the first thing he says is, he's done. Watch yourself. Take your time. The right hand is working, right? And then a split second later, he goes, finish him already. What the fuck's going on? These are literally what he said. And then he's like, all right, just relax. But that was an off-balance shot. You're not even hurt. It didn't do anything. Why don't you ask your son if he's okay? I'm not saying he was hurt. But to be like, dude, that was off balance. You're not hurt. Why don't you ask him if he's okay? It just seemed like throughout this whole fight, I don't know, dude. It blew me away. But this is a little clip of what I'm talking about. He's done. I mean, how do you go from that to that? How do you be like, hey, man, calm down a little bit. Take your time. Everything's fine. Finish him already. What the, dude, I mean, he was just all over the place. Man, and down the stretch of this fight, there's more to it. But we're going to get into actually talking about this fight. Now, like I said, credit to Lopez because he did start to land the better shots. I did give him the second and the third round. I thought he closed stronger in that third round, landing, several shots in a big right hands down the stretch, so he kind of stole the round. That jab and the hooks. And, all the things, some of the fundamental things that we saw out of Teofimo when he was going against Lomachenko, the jab to the stomach, and, tracking his guy down, not necessarily just leaping for these major shots. Now, we know Kambosos isn't, going in on the Lomachenko level, but still, dude, you got to take it serious. And he said this is personal. He didn't like this guy. Well, you could tell it was pretty personal in the ring. Now, Kambosos, though, after a couple rounds where I thought that he lost, credit to him because he started taking over the fight right here. I mean, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, you could make an argument that those were all Kambosos' round. I'm not saying for sure, but the jabs, the left hook, he was working the body as well. Whether it was a lead right hand or a counter, I mean, he was doing his thing, and he started feinting with the jab really well, then landing the right hand behind it. He was kind of minorly toying with him. Minorly. There was this, I think, right around the 6th or 7th is when Lopez's eye got cut. That uppercut and a few other really big right hands in the 7th round. Like I said, you could make an argument from the 4th to the 7th, that was all Kambosos. So all of a sudden, he's got a pretty sizable lead. Now, credit to Lopez because, like I said, he didn't lay down. He didn't lay down at all. And you can make an argument he won the 8th, he won the 9th, and he for sure won the 10th. And I kind of thought he just, the late shots, he kind of stole some rounds in there. The 8th round I thought he stole. Then, there's a lot of exchanges, by the way, through all this. But it seemed like in the 9th he may have buzzed Kambosos with the lead right hand, more hooks as well. Then I think it was a right hand that did knock him down in that 10th round. And Lopez, to his credit, like I said, really started pouring it down. It was a dominant round. He definitely looked hurt. But he wasn't able to pour on the whole rest of the round. He did get gassed a little bit. He definitely got gassed a little bit and couldn't quite finish him off. But, he's going back to his corner. And the last couple of times when you see him in the corner, his dad's up there celebrating. And, it's like he's, cheering with the crowd every time and all that. And I get it. You got energy. That's great. But there was like a 10-second gap at times in this fight where Teofimo's sitting down and his trainer's not even in the ring just yet. And he's trying to grab the water. He's trying to grab this. And it's like, dude, we got a fight going on here. I don't know if you know, but your son's still in this fight. And like I mentioned, Kambosos, to come back after that 10th round where it looked bad, right? It looked bad. Remember when Manny Pacquiao got Jeff Horn? I think it was the 9th or 10th round. And it looked like he was going to stop him. Maybe it wasn't that brutal, On my scorecard to win the 11th and 12th, he got back on his jab right away, landed multiple right hands. And Lopez all of a sudden kind of went back to getting outboxed. And his father did say stuff like, you got to get back to the jab, and you can't be out like on the edge of the pocket because you're just losing. You got to get inside, but you got to use your jab. So he was saying that. But when I just thought of that throughout this fight, like, dude, the way he's got him fighting, he's got to close the gap or he's going to get outboxed. And I would have never thought that going in, that Teofimo, who's slick, who's fundamental, he's got, a lot of skill. And like I said, we saw that on display in numerous fights, including his last one with Lomachenko. It just blew me away that Kambosos was either outworking him or just outboxing him. And I think Lopez did land pretty well somewhat down the stretch. Some good lands in that 12th round, but I think it was too late. I thought I gave Kambosos that round. When you start to add them up, like I said, there was some competitive rounds in there, no doubt about it. I couldn't see giving the fight to Lopez. I just couldn't. I personally couldn't see it. The scorecards read, what was it, 115, 111, 114, 113, and 115, 112. Now, this didn't help with the conspiracy stuff from the Teofimo side when the ref raised his hand and then put it back down. That was some shaky shit. You know what I mean? That was shaky. I can't say that it wasn't. You never liked that, especially when it wasn't like cut and dry that he won. It wasn't like it was what they were talking about, 10-2. It wasn't 10-2. So to me, it was like, ref, why are you even getting that excited about that? Like, why are you jumping the gun like that? That threw me off a little bit. So, and you could see the ref's face kind of was like, oh shit, I just did that. You know what I mean? But literally he said the undefeated, and I think some other thing he said, but it didn't. They're both undefeated, so there was no point in, the announcer just said undefeated and still undefeated. Well, they're both undefeated. So what are you raising hands for? So before the third card was properly announced, the ref did put his hand up, Teofimo's hand. And they put it down, and Teofimo was like, what the hell's going on, you know? Now, 7-5, I had it for Kambosos. 7-4-1, 6-5-1, however you want to get it there. I did have Kambosos winning this fight. I don't think it was any kind of 9-3, 10-2 thing. I did see some people there. This was easy to, judge if it was a clean win. You can be a clean win and win 7-5, But yeah, man, I mean, and then after some of the stuff, I mean, not just after the fight, right? After. I'm talking about after at the hotel. I mean, the things that Teofimo Sr. was worried about was just crazy. He was like, dude, we're the people's champ. We sold out venues. All I really care about is my son still selling out venues. They know who he won. But then he had the audacity to bring up Mayweather in this scenario. They've done this multiple times like they're going to be bigger than Mayweather. But this is a clip of an interview by Seconds Out that was like, really, dude? Here it is.
And this is not going to stain my son. It's going to stain him because now we can't say we're better than Floyd Mayweather because now Floyd's going to say, we got that, you know what I'm saying? We got that loss. And listen, it doesn't really matter. He's the people's champ. Everybody's going to fill out their arenas for him, And that's all I'm concerned about, To know who won that tonight, and it doesn't matter what the judges said, we won tonight. And this bullshit loss, because it's a bullshit loss, and I should have never fought with the zone. I should have stood with Top Rank, because those are the people that really love us, and I learned. You learn from your mistakes, you know what I'm saying? So we go back with Top Rank.
But anyway, when he says I never should have went to zone and all that, Matchroom and all that, that was ridiculous. Oh, the zone, and he blamed the commission and the judges because they're too loudmouth. They don't like when people are loud and all that. It was ridiculous. And when he started making up, saying stuff, I didn't lose this fight, I won it 10-2, the crowd booed. Both of them, especially Senior, was like, nah, you heard the crowd, they booed it. It's like, nah, dude, they were booing you. They booed you, dude. They booed you. So, where does he go? Does he go to 140, I mean, wherever he goes, and then he's like, and other times they forced me. They forced me to stay at 135. Like, nobody forced you. They don't have the right to force you to do anything. So, to me, he just had a lot of excuses, and we see it. But they just had a lot of excuses, and I really hope Teofimo realizes how negligent his father was in that corner that night and after, too. Like I said, you beat the man that beat the man. You enter the top 10 pound for pound. Shit goes to your head. We know that, right? We know that. It happens, right? It happens to the best of them. Look at Errol Spence. He didn't lose in the ring, but, Denny Moore gaining some weight, having a few too many cocktails, obviously. You know what I mean? It got to him. It did get to him. We see this time and time again. Even like outside the world of entertainment and sports, just uber rich people, you see an interview with them 5-10 years later, you see now all of a sudden they're, worth $10 billion and the interview looks a lot different all of a sudden. And you're like, wow, boy, that's weird. Why is he saying that? So anyway, I just hope he gets a new trainer. I mean, it does sound like he was they've had a lot of issues in that camp amongst themselves. We know him and his dad get along, don't get along, get along, don't get along. We're hearing, there's a great article on BoxingScene.com that broke down a variety of things going into this fight, so he had a lot on his plate, just had a kid, is getting served divorce papers. We don't know what's going to come from that, by the way. So let's not I see some people jumping on one or the other. Let's see what that all entails. But, man, much respect to Lopez the way he fought, by the way. His cut was all messed up. His eye was all messed up. But George Kambosos Jr., this guy was confident the whole time. Yeah, he was talking shit, but he was doing it in a different manner that was a little bit more like, Like, I did notice that. Now that I kind of think about it the whole time, he was real confident. And in some of the fights that we saw with Lee Selby and whatnot, Mickey Bay, the split decisions, majority decision type stuff, I just didn't see this. And so he's made improvements, and, as that level went up, he more than just rose up to the occasion. Now, of course, some of it has to do with how Lopez was fighting for most of his fight. Forget fundamentals. And I'm not trying to make him out to be like Mr. Fundamentals, because we do see that leaping shot and all that before, but, the mentality he had, he did not respect Kambosos in this fight. He just did it. He came out just on a hunt right away. And Kambosos took a lot of shots himself. He kept on ticking and landed the bigger, better shots. I had him winning the fight, like a lot of people did. But, wow. Wow, man. That was a great, great fight. Oh, my gosh. That was just a whole lot of fun, dude. Man, I'm still, like, buzzing from it. I really am. I mean, that was phenomenal. Anyway, I do want to just talk real quick about that Figueroa and Fulton fight. Then we're going to go ahead and bring in John as well. And this was a razor sharp fight here too. Fulton, like through the first, say 5 rounds, I'm not going to say Fulton won all 5 rounds, but he had control of the fight. Came out there, Fulton, with that jab, the lead right hands. I liked what he was doing with the one hand free, during the clinch. There was actually a headbutt pretty early in on there. I remember, but yeah, the left hook counters. He had his stuff going, and I thought Figueroa did some nice work. He was starting to get to the body as well, but the cleaner shots, the stinging right hands. Imagine if, and I think I tweeted this, imagine if Fulton had real deal power. My goodness gracious. Because he'll land the cleaner shot all night long, but clearly he just doesn't have a ton of power. But the third round, that's where I thought, even though I gave Fulton the next one after that, I did think Figueroa started to, there was action. He started like action inside the trenches. He started to really get to the body, started landing hooks with both hands. I thought he stole that round. Like I said, I thought Fulton did manage to win the 4th round. The early and late, the short, clean shots. That's another thing. We knew, Fulton is multi-talented, going in on the inside, being on the move. He was mixing up a good blend, but his short shots on the inside, especially in the first half of the fight, I should preference, was pretty damn impressive. So I had him up pretty cleanly. I gave Figueroa the 6th round. I thought some of the stuff I just thought he had his best round, several hard right hands. Midway, it seemed like he was starting to take the fight over in some senses. So I had it 4-2 after 6 for Fulton, give or take. I did think Fulton won the 7th round, though he had the better shots, but Figueroa started to take control of most of the rounds. Started landing harder, closing stronger, and he started working the head and body. I was really impressed by the body work of Fulton, or Figueroa too, but Fulton as well. I mean, you could look at it, 106-85. Now you'd assume Figueroa was going to win work, right? But 106-85, 85 to the body, still a lot. And then Figueroa, for me, won the 9th, in the 10th. I thought that Fulton was kind of leaning over too much on the inside, the heavier shots, closing stronger each round. Fulton, would have his he would get his shots off, but he started getting affected more and more by the shots. In the 10th round, I looked at it, definitely hurt in that round, or at least buzzed. And you notice with Figueroa after the fight, he said, "I hurt you like 4 times." Fulton didn't say, "No, you didn't." He actually didn't say he didn't. And in the 11th, in the 12th, I thought the stick and move, and then once in a while kind of charge in or do some work on the inside. I did give Fulton the 11th. The 12th, I thought maybe Figueroa closed strong. That was a very close round. There were some competitive rounds in this fight, no doubt about it. One scorecard had it 114-114. The other had it or two of them had it 116-112. And I didn't see 8-4 for Fulton. I could see Fulton winning. That's fine. 7-5, 6-5-1. I would have been fine with the draw in this one. I didn't necessarily have Figueroa winning 7 or 8 rounds. I'll say that. But it was a competitive enough fight that I want to see the rematch. Now, it's not going to come next. And, Figueroa did say that he might go to featherweight. And both of them are probably going to end up at featherweight soon anyway, or somewhat soon, in the next year or two, regardless, I think, Fulton. So it won't be – well, we can't say it won't be for a fact because I guess – well, I don't know. They didn't put a petition in, so the WBC and WBO already called it. So I don't know. I don't think they can. I'm not sure if they can appeal or not on that. We'll see. Well, they can appeal. I just don't know if they'll go through. The Figueroa ended up outworking him. No surprise there. Landed 311 to 269. In both of those, 311 and 269 for landing is crazy. Figueroa, that pace just kept going up and up and up, and he was going over 100 the last handful of rounds. He threw 1,060 and landed 30%. When you throw 1,000 punches and you land 30%, that's a lot. And Fulton, he threw 729, landed 37%. But yeah, 106 to 85 on the body attack, both of them almost landing. That's pretty freaking nuts, man. That was one of the best fights of the year. Now, did it have a knockdown? No. Was someone badly hurt? No. But Fulton did a lot in that fight, but also got hurt at least twice. I don't know if it was 4 times, but he definitely was feeling it. And like he had those moments where he was leaning, and Figueroa all of a sudden was just letting off just a plethora of variety of shots. This guy, once he warms up, Figueroa on his way up looked kind of sloppy, knocking people out at times. But other times you saw, wow, dude, he'll attack the body. He'll throw a lot of different shots. Whatever's open to the target, he's going to work the body. He's going to throw a jab. But once he gets that jab going, and he can really let off hooks and uppercuts, and he was landing great shots. And he had taken over the fight in the second half, a lot of that fight. So definitely a fight that warrants a rematch. And maybe, in a year's time, at featherweight, it'd be just as good for both of them, But I got to admit, I haven't watched it again, but I don't believe I have Figueroa winning 7 or 8 rounds. That said, though, I didn't have it 8-4. Those 2 scorecards for Fulton, I didn't have it. I didn't have it for Fulton that wide. But yeah, 7-5, 6-5-1, whatever. I was okay with the draw. But man, what a fun fight. And that card itself, that triple header, had solid competitive fights throughout. We'll talk about that a little later. I gave my take. Let's bring in a great boxing mind, John, here, and see what he thought of these 2 fights, because we had a hell of a weekend. Now we're going into what could be a really fun weekend as well. What's going on, John? How you doing, man?
Hey, Chris, great to be here. Like you said, we came off a great week of action, 2 great fights with Lopez, Kambosos, and Figueroa and Fulton. So that was really hell of a night for boxing. Of course, the one, well, really both results being surprising in their own way. If you look at the odds, of course, Kambosos being a complete shocker, and then Figueroa also being a significant underdog, and Fulton getting the win. But that fight really being very, very, very tight. And I think that decision was debatable.
No, I agree. I think it warranted a rematch. I mean, they got to get it in at some point, man, because that was, well, one, too good of a fight, but it is open-ended. It definitely is open-ended. And I did like how, of course, you can have some back and forth. You can have some argument that both thought they won, of course. But I did like how Fulton said, man, I'll run it back, dude. I'm not afraid to run it back. Now, obviously, he's going to have something else on his plate now, it seems. But they're young enough. Even if it happens at 126, John, I'm good with it. I really want to see this fight again. And this does nothing. Of course, Figueroa has the L on his record, but this, to me, this doesn't really faze me at all as far as what I think of Figueroa either. I mean, this really brought up both of them in certain ways. I mean, Fulton, now we see that the power at some point, you know, the lack of real punching power, you go up to featherweight, it may hurt you more, who knows, but that is basically stopping him from separating a little bit more in this fight. I thought if he had, because his punches, when they land with the speed and accuracy, you're like, oh my God, but he just doesn't have a lot of power, so it does catch up with you. Go ahead and let's start though with the shocker in a sense, right? With Teofimo Lopez, and kind of walk us through that first round. Obviously, the corner, and just how Lopez did get credit to him. He got back in that fight and everything. How did you see that fight going down?
Yeah, that's what I'm just going to do. I mean, this was a complete shocker. I thought Kambosos was going to pretty much get blown out, and I'd seen him before, and one thing I did accurately assess with him, and you saw Saturday night, was he has very fast hands, and of course, Teofimo Lopez has a lot of attributes, including fast hands, but Kambosos was not overmatched with the speed. That was something I saw within the realm of possibility, but what I didn't see coming at all, and to me, that was the biggest difference in this fight from the way I think most people thought it would. Almost everybody thought it would go. Let's be real here on this one. I mean, there was nobody out there picking Kambosos. You had these people out there. Oh, he's going to be more competitive than you think. Granted, but what does that mean? I mean, define that. So he's going 8 rounds instead of 6 or 4. I mean, there was nobody really serious with a definitive Kambosos pick out there, and you don't actually see that often, even in a fight when somebody's a big underdog. So I'm giving credit to Kambosos just in the sense that just how little chance everybody thought he had, and as you pointed out, I thought it might be false, but it wasn't false. He had great confidence. He expressed that going in. But getting back to the difference to me was I didn't see any power coming out to me that was of any note from Kambosos, and his 2 highest level fights of Mickey Bay and Lee Selby, and Mickey Bay and Lee Selby at lightweight, 2 guys who can't, and that's your best, and you're both going to, in both of those fights, you're going to close decision. That's not some big endorsement of your power. And he coming in had 10 KOs and 19 fights, and all the KOs were against the lower level opposition that he did have. So I just didn't think the power was there for him to do anything with Lopez. And as you accurately pointed out, Lopez and his father, senior and junior, both obviously went into the fight with no respect for Kambosos. And I'm not saying I had a lot for him going in either, being fair to those two, even though it's their job to be ready. He didn't show anything to me to lead me to believe he was going to be a significant threat, except I thought he had good hand speed, but I didn't think one attribute was going to be enough. One thing I didn't think would make that much of a difference, but then in the fight I think also helped Kambosos, is he's pretty tall for a lightweight, and you saw Lopez dominate the fight against Nakatani, who is not skilled and has nowhere near the talent of Kambosos, but and Lopez dominated the fight, but he couldn't get him out of there. You know, he was a tall guy, and Lopez is about, you know, average height for a lightweight. He's not short, but you know, sometimes when you've got to punch up on a guy, even when you're a great puncher like Lopez, you know, if it's somebody who's competent, who's you know, closer to your level, it can take away a little bit of that power. But the difference to me was Kambosos showing the power. That's to here, and you heard Kambosos say it post fight. His plan was, you know, he was looking at historical fights, and he thought, I need to hurt this guy right off the bat. Now, of course, you can say it and not be able to do it. It's okay to have that concept, but he was able to do it in the first round, and he definitely hurt him when he dropped him. I mean, that was a monster shot. I mean, that wasn't even just an average shot.
Yeah, this whole flash knockdown, I heard a bunch, John. I was like, are you kidding me? That was his neck snapped.
Well, that was a monster shot. I mean, I didn't think Kambosos was a puncher going in, but I saw enough through 12 rounds of this fight. I think he can punch. Now, that you just got to, like I always say, you got to go on what you see, and you've got to alter your takes on some things, and you know, he's got more power than I thought he did. He's not a guy that doesn't have power, because it wasn't just that one shot. Then sometimes you say, well, one shot, he hasn't replicated in other fights, but I don't think this fight ended up qualifying, because he ended up landing solid shots that were stinging Lopez later in the fight, throughout the fight, and you saw what Lopez's face looked like after the fight. So Kambosos proved he can hit, and he hit him with a huge shot. Really, you look at that shot that Kambosos knocked him down with in the first round, and Lopez was pretty lucky he got up. You know, that was a big shot. Even though he went down, I'd say he probably showed his chins pretty good. So, you know, he got up, but what I gave Lopez props for, and I wanted to see going into the fight, thinking Kambosos was inferior opposition, was, hey, I always think bad things can happen when you let somebody hang around, get him out of there. He tried to get him out of there, but he did it in the most amateurish, you know, the old way the amateurs used to fight. When I say that, you know, it kind of changed over the years, but the old way of amateur fighting, when you go back in the 70s and the 60s and before early 80s, was just guys swinging wild a lot of times. And that's what Lopez came out, you know, and that was terrible. I mean, he just came out, no respect, swinging wild, and he got caught with a big shot. He was probably lucky he got up. And, you know, as he was still trying to do some of that, I mean, Kambosos was counting them hard. I mean, they were hard shots, and that was the big surprise to me. I thought Kambosos had hand speed, but I didn't think he'd be stinging Lopez like he was. And he repeatedly stung him. I mean, there were times you saw that where Lopez had to then back off. He was getting respect because, you know, Lopez was getting hurt with those shots. And as you accurately described what was going on in the corner, I mean, they finally kind of got it together a little bit, where he was throwing the jab out there and stopped with the just swinging wild, and he looked a little more like the old Teofimo Lopez. And then, you know, he would have spurts where it looked like he was going to take over, you know, culminating in the 10th where he almost knocked him out. But I agree with your take on it also, Chris. It just looked like he was just a little bit gassed all those times he was about to take over. And you know, you got to figure, look, you still got to make 135 pounds. I mean, you can be in not as good shape, but you got to be in decent shape, or, you know, he wouldn't make the 135 on the first try. Now, I know there's different qualities of making it, and I'm sure this might have been a situation where he's pressed and things, but he still did make it. So, you know, he was in some condition, but not in his best. And you know, to his credit, he had adversity, and he just about had Kambosos out of there. I was with you. I had Kambosos up, you know, Lopez rallying. I could have gone as far in this one as a draw, but I agreed with you 100%. I did not see a way to score the fight for Lopez. I didn't see any realistic scoring for a Lopez win. And I thought Kambosos did, like you said, you know, 7-5 Kambosos. They each had 10-8 rounds with the knockdowns. That was reasonable. I thought you could stretch it to a draw for Lopez. I didn't see a win for Lopez. So no way to me he won this fight, but draw at best. You made a good point about the corner. Everybody was taking it so lightly. There was no discussion about what happened to Joey Gamache pre-fight. Let's face it. None of the boxing journalists were even discussing it. And obviously Joey Gamache, after doing the great job and being brought, let's be fair, being brought in by Lopez Sr., as well as Junior. I mean, they brought him in. I mean, I agree with everything that was going bad that you were talking about Saturday night. But one thing I do have to add, if you really kind of get perspective on it, because the guy is such a good fighter, this even considering Saturday night, because people I think have lost sight in this week because of the upset how close Lopez came to pulling that fight out, either by knockout in the 10th round or really by a decision, because I think a draw would have been reasonable. So he almost still did come away with the fight in two different ways. And Lopez Sr. did build him as a fighter. I mean, you can look at the relationship how you want to, but even before they brought Gamache in, I mean, it was a junior-senior combo that created what Teofimo Lopez was, and then Gamache just kind of perfected things. But let's face it, again, you got to call what you see. I mean, Gamache was missed. He was missed Saturday night greatly. I've got to assume, and I don't actually even think this is unreasonable, even though it obviously didn't work out. I mean, let's get back to even Senior, in that post-fight interview, the way he was talking, I could see, hindsight's always 20/20. Even he forgot. Like, in other words, the whole logic of what this whole fight was about Saturday night was grabbing an overinflated paycheck for a fight that you thought you were gonna knock a guy out quick. In other words, now in hindsight, when he lost, we're saying that was a bad move, but that's why they went away from Top Rank. I mean, that's why they fought on DAZN. That's why they took the fight. I mean, Teo Lopez didn't need George Kambosos for his marketability. Like you said, he was already one of the top 10 pound for pound in the world. He's the man at lightweight. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, to me, that's undisputed. So, he could have moved up there, or frankly, let's face it. I mean, the belts. I'll still say the belts are overrated. I mean, he was the man. If he dumped an IBF belt, who would have cared? Because he didn't fight George Kambosos. I mean, again, going into the fight, not knowing that Kambosos was quite what he turned out to be, which now we know he is a formidable opponent. But, it's hindsight. In other words, the logic wasn't all that bad, but the problem that ruined it was Kambosos was a formidable opponent. And, you had some of the Aussies talking about it, but again, nobody really picking him to win. But, they were right. He was a little better than everybody else in the world was thinking he was, what the Australians thought. And, that was what upset the apple cart. That was what toppled the plan is, so they took him lightly. He was better than they thought, and it ended up imploding on him because Teo didn't quite pull the win out. He came very close. Even though Teo didn't get stopped, in a way, when you look the way that fight played out, a famous fight that it kind of reminded me of, not necessarily of course, the styles and everything, but just sort of the flow of it and what you were thinking. It reminded me a little bit of a Tyson Douglas, even though Douglas was even a bigger underdog. You're just kind of taking this fight. Tyson went to Japan. It was just to make money, to fight in Japan, and we're not taking Douglas seriously, and Tyson was losing all the early rounds, and it was shocking everybody. And then Tyson was able to, at least for a moment, get it together and drop Douglas. But Douglas got back up and took the play away from him, and even so Tyson came close to a KO there, didn't get it, and then Douglas came back, rallied. In that case, knocked out Tyson, but. That kind of a thing that he was in a fight he wasn't expecting. The payday looked like it made sense, but then you were in with a more formidable opponent than you expected. And in Tyson's case, the corner wasn't ready. They didn't have an end swell when Tyson's, eyes started swelling up. It was a rubber with water, cold water.
Right.
In it. I mean, because they didn't even have an end swell for his eyes. Well, I mean, that's how overconfident they were. They didn't even bring the end swell.
That was a bad cut.
Yeah, right. So, and then and then here Lopez got cut bad. But again, look, Kambosos' face had a lot of damage. After the fight, he got dropped, and I want to add too, Kambosos did show a good chin in the fight despite going down because Lopez has speed and power. There's no doubt about that, and he had those flashes where he looked like his old self. One of the flashes being when he dropped him. So I think Kambosos even did show chin despite going down to go 12 with Tio Lopez with his own face also getting busted up. And, he did enough at the end to, hang on and win the fight, as you're getting to. I'm not sure. I thought he quite rallied as much as, you and some people thought. But I do agree that what you said, that Lopez kind of gassed. He wasn't doing anything either, So I think it was kind of like, Tio couldn't seize the opportunity there, and Kambosos had the guts and heart to pull it together and get through those last two rounds. But it was a great fight, one of the best fights of the year. For me, nothing's going to top Fury Wilder 3, but this was right up there, and so was Fulton Figueroa, which we're going to talk about. But I was shocked, completely shocked. Obviously wrong that Teofimo Lopez was going to blow him out. And I look at what part did I see? I think Kambosos' hand speed is the only thing really I saw, but I didn't see the power he was going to bring. He brought a better chin than I expected, and Tio Lopez Teofimo Lopez just coming out, like a street fighter trying to knock him out. I mean, I like trying to get him out of there early because bad things can happen, like happened in this fight when you don't get him out of there early. But just the way he did it was ridiculous. Left himself wide open and didn't respect Kambosos at all, like you said, and he paid for it by getting dropped heavily. And he was getting hurt on other occasions. I mean, you could see Kambosos was stinging him. So my conclusion here is Teofimo, and here would be my example, and I'll say it, and if people don't like this take, I don't care because this is my point. To think that just because of this one outing. I mean, of course, you wonder about the corner, but let's assume they get it together in the corner and that kind of thing. To think that just because of this, that Teofimo Lopez, and they both, have top-rank affiliation, would have no chance against Josh Taylor is ridiculous. I mean, it's actually ridiculous to think he'd have no chance. It's not that severe. He came very close to still winning the fight, and Kambosos proved he was better than we thought. Now, I'm not saying you can say he's gonna beat Josh Taylor either, but you can't get too extreme because of this. If he got knocked out and he didn't show anything, but he came close to winning the fight in the cards. He came close to knocking Kambosos out, and he obviously wasn't taking him seriously, which is on him and his dad. But then one more final thing on the corner. I think it probably hasn't been said for sure, but I think it probably was a money issue. And Chris, I think you made a good statement about not only in sports but just in life. And I've seen it in the law business and with the kind of law I do. You see it all the time. I mean, people come into a lot of money and they start acting differently, and it just changes people. People who haven't been fortunate enough to be in that situation, they think, oh, wouldn't change me, or I just I know how to handle. No, it's just different psychologically, and what I thought was probably true that's hard to fathom is they said he had $20,000 left,
right,
before the fight. But you know what? Look, 40%. Think about it. 40% federal and state taxes, on these purses. You got to pay trainers. You got to pay for a training camp.
Yep.
These are young guys mostly, and then you're expected
he said it was $250,000 for his camp. Just alone.
Right, and you're expected to be styling, showing off. So you add all those things you buy. It doesn't last. It just doesn't last.
It adds up quick.
Right. As stupid as people would think it is, it just doesn't last as long as people think. I actually do believe that. I mean, when I read that, I thought, you know what? That's the type of thing we don't hear all the time. That's probably true, and that probably tells you why they didn't bring Gamache in. They probably said, you know, what if he's getting 10% or some percentage close to that, and they just said, yeah, it's Kambosos. We're not going to bring Joey in for this fight. I mean, I don't know that. I don't have any direct evidence of that, but it would perfectly fit then. But it wasn't discussed at all going into the fight, and it ended up mattering. So that would be one thing you would be looking at now from this point on. I mean, his dad could still be even the main guy, but they really should get Gamache back in there when they try to get it back together.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I actually did hear in a couple of places that he didn't even train at this normal strength and conditioning thing either because of the money, more than likely. So
Yeah.
It does happen. And he's, you know, I'll give him credit, man. He does actually, you know, he actually does, he says some wild storm or whatever, but like he does actually come clean a lot of times too. And obviously he's had some, you know, issues, family issues and whatnot, and, you know, he's going through some stuff, and that's not easy. But yeah, it's crazy to think a year and change ago he was on top of the world, and now he took a loss to someone that, you know, like you said, nobody thought he was gonna lose to, but it's so true. I mean, he fought, considering how bad he fought, like as far as the, you know, what is the game plan. You're right. I mean, he damn near came back and won the fight. So I don't know. Maybe he just, you know, his camp, like we've been saying, wasn't all that good either. We know he has weight issues, so that could have played into it. But had he had just won, you know, the 11th and 12th, or just the 11th, like I'm looking at the scorecards, he would have had to have probably won the last two rounds. Now that I look at it, yeah, he would have had to, because it would have been 8-4. So, but anyway, that was a hell of a fight, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
so,
it was a great fight, shocking result, and tons of credit to Kambosos. I think nobody should take anything away from him. He performed great, and I think, you know, he performed well enough, even with the mistakes Lopez made that we well documented. I think he is in with that. You know, you had the top lightweight quartet. You know, he's in there now. It doesn't mean he already beat Lopez. So, you know, I mean, he's right there.
Right.
And I'll say too, I mean, anybody that thinks, you know, we don't know which direction Kambosos is going to go in yet, but, you know, I already see some people think I'll say this. I mean, Kambosos showed me enough. Some takes I don't agree with that I've seen now after the fight, because again, you got to adjust. I've changed my opinion of him. Some people maybe haven't as much. I think when I see people now saying like, oh, that's an easy fight for Lomachenko now, or that's an easy fight for Haynes. No.
Yeah.
I will say,
like, he doesn't mess with any of them. They say, oh, this is going to be easy. Tank's going to come calling now. You know, that type of stuff. It's like,
right.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
I don't see that. If now what happened to, you know, I'm not saying it will, but what happened to Lopez and Buster Douglas could happen to Kambosos. I mean, I'm not saying it will, but
oh my gosh,
let's assume he stays. Let's assume he stays close to his Hungary at least, and he might, because if he gets discounted again, you know, he might keep a chip on his shoulder. I don't see any of these guys. It doesn't mean I'm automatically picking him either, but I'm not with that take. I mean, I think he showed he belongs there. He now can't be considered an easy mark for any of these guys. Those are just simply really, really now, and it makes me extremely curious to see which direction Kambosos is going to go in, because, you know, does he maybe try to, and he is the champ now, you know, I think that, you know, historically he's just the champ. Does he go, so it's all legit, you know, does he go to Australia as the champ and maybe have a kind of easy defense and make money there before he takes one of those tougher fights? Or sometimes, again, with what we just saw happen, you know, sometimes that strategy can be overrated. I mean, if the payday's big enough, maybe you take the big fight next. You know, figure out where the most money is, but which of these guys is going to be the best move for him? You know, does he the indications are he's kind of a free agent. Lou DiBella's tweeting that, he's got him, but he's kind of like otherwise a free agent. Like they can make a deal to fight who they want to. If that's accurate, assuming that's accurate, then he's got the choice. Is Tank Davis now? You hear, and it's not really in front of the scenes. The only, to me, we have some gate evidence of Tank Davis, and we have evidence that Showtime keeps putting him on pay-per-view, but it's all circumstantial right now. Like usually you get more credible, concrete source reports. Like, we really, with Tank recently, haven't gotten concrete pay-per-view buy rates. And his show ratings, and I do follow this stuff, they weren't that great, before they started doing the pay-per-view thing. They were a little better than the other guys, okay? A little better, but not, he might have had some showings of like 375,000, but, that's 25 million subscribers. Again, a little better, not better than Wilder. When Wilder popped up on show, he beat all those guys. But better than the other guys. But I do have to assume. Stephen Espinosa, Viacom, CBS, they're not fools. Tank's, he's going to have another pay-per-view Sunday, against Isaac Cruz, who's not a big name. So, circumstantial evidence indicates he would be bringing the money, but I almost need to see a little more evidence. But like if he is bringing that money, does Kambosos go there? Ryan Garcia's been inactive, but he's got the huge social media following coming off a big win. Kambosos just had a DAZN fight. Does he go there? Haney has got this fight with Diaz Saturday night, which we can touch on shortly. Does he, is that a fit then with DAZN? And just beat Lopez, or you got Lomachenko with Top Rank there. There's a lot of options for him there. So I'm real curious to see where that's going to go.
Yeah, me too. It's always kind of interesting to see when this type of stuff happens, what goes on, and like you said, he says that they're going to try to keep me out of camp, or get out of the gym for a little bit to calm down a little bit, let my body rest, Kambosos, because, they kept having to do the stop and start. So he has been on and off training for a long time. So, you probably should just shut down and let the body heal and whatnot. But it is going to be interesting. And we know, if I do think it'll be in Australia. I really think he's going to be like, screw it. It's going to be a big stadium fight. It's not like Horn had this huge following, and then, oh, by the way, Pacquiao, it was an event because, a name went over there, but he now made a name to where he's going to be a pretty big deal over there, and maybe they can get, that department of the government to put up some money and help that out too, because it's probably going to be a nice gate with the stadium and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see. Let's switch networks, I guess you could say, and we'll go to Figueroa Fulton, and we'll eventually get to some of these undercards because they were competitive. It was a good triple header in general. But Figueroa Fulton, another fight of the year type, top 10 type, top 15, top whatever. Some people have it in the top 5. It's a hell of a fight as well. It did seem like Fulton was, the first half of the fight was his. Second half, clearly Figueroa got back. He also hurt him multiple times. I thought it was very telling, John, that when he said I hurt you 4 times, didn't really say, no, dude, just once. Or not, he's like, yeah, but, he didn't really deny it, which you usually just assume knee-jerk, just this business. It's usually like you got to put it, no, dude, you didn't hurt me. Or that was a good shot, but I was still okay. Or, usually you deny it and whatnot. But how did you see this fight go down? What'd you think of it? What'd you score it? Because it was super competitive and, like I said earlier, definitely warrants a rematch.
Yeah, now this one, unlike Kambosos and Lopez, this one did play out almost exactly the way I thought it would. I thought that Fulton, very versatile, can do a lot of things. And he was doing that, but like you pointed out in your open, he's missing the punching power. And he landed a lot of clean, sharp shots, but you could see that. Fulton's a fighter that can do everything but bang with power. And Figueroa, a tall guy, but still strong for this weight, 122. And you know, I did say going in, and I think people did appreciate a little more subtle evidence of this than they gave Figueroa credit for before this fight. I said he's a guy who has some skills who he doesn't show them, and I didn't think he was going to pull out and box, and I said that, and he didn't. But you did see some evidence of his skill in there, the way he was able to land the shots and get himself in position to land different shots. He's not an unskilled guy. He chooses to fight in a pressure, entertaining fashion, I think, really to be a crowd pleaser, and because it also has worked for him. But I don't think he's an unskilled guy that is you know, incapable of fighting with good, subtle boxing skills, and he does a lot of that on the inside, and he gets himself in position to land his shots, and especially to the body. You know, you got to count those body shots. He was it was better for Fulton early, but I thought Figueroa would start wearing him down some, and he was with that body attack. He was able to push him into the ropes. Fulton's corner, correctly, I think they felt like it might be slipping away from him some. You know, then they told him to try backing him up. He did that a little bit, but he couldn't do it sustained. Then down the stretch, they told him just try to box him some, and he couldn't hold Figueroa off. You know, that late in the fight, you get you're tired as it is, and then he doesn't have the power to give Figueroa anything to think about. So that really, you know, those two things didn't work sustained for Fulton. He was banging pretty even with him on the inside. I don't think Fulton was doing bad or anything like that, and it was a very tight fight. But I thought Figueroa did enough down the stretch as well, and it didn't fall into the robbery classification for me by any means. It was a very close fight, but I just thought it was a fight to me that Figueroa clearly won, kind of like you described. Like some fights you have a 7-5, but you felt – you can't say then, well, it's 7-5, nobody could see a draw. But I just felt like that was a pretty clear – to me, obviously the judges didn't agree, but I thought it was – and one judge had a draw. I thought it was a pretty clear 7-5 Figueroa for me. I agreed with Figueroa's shock, and I did see it the way Figueroa did, and like you said, Fulton didn't deny. Now, Fulton wasn't in horrible trouble or anything like that, but – I did think Figueroa had him hurt on 3-4 occasions. To Fulton's credit, you know, Figueroa couldn't step it up to the next level where he could put him away or drop him or get it get him where he was like obviously visibly in trouble. But I did think he had him about to get him going on a few occasions and couldn't quite get it there because Fulton's just that good of a fighter. You got to give him credit there too. And he showed a good chin. But I didn't think Fulton ever hurt Figueroa, and I thought that Figueroa hurt Fulton on 3 or 4 occasions, kind of like I knew what Figueroa was referring to there. And, you know, I don't go on the punch stats for scoring who won a fight or anything, but along the lines of where I saw it, I thought this kind of fit. Figueroa threw more. He ended up landing more power punches, and he's the harder puncher. So, you know, I just kind of thought I didn't, you know, and that depends what round it is and everything. But again, I thought, you know, Figueroa hurt him some. He was never hurt. He landed more. He threw more. He punched harder. He was the aggressor. To me, you know, I just thought that was a Figueroa win. And as you said, though, I agree. I liked Fulton's attitude. He would say, "We'll run it back." I don't think Figueroa's going to try to make 122 again, but you know, there's no real big difference from 122 to 126 except making the weight. So I'm looking at it the same way. You know, these guys are all PBC. PBC's done a good job signing people in the 122, 126 region. I could see a really good featherweight series. You know, they've got Ray Vargas there, who they're going to want to get some big fights because he's signed with PBC, came over from Golden Boy, and he had some injuries. He was out, but he's back. Gary Russell's due to be back. You know, people like to make fun of Russell, but like I've said before, now he's been out a little bit long now, but you know, because he missed a no-hoper fight some years, you know, who cares? You know, like I mean, people on Twitter get all hung up on that. Like, in other words, if he's fighting Jojo Diaz and then he's fighting Tug, you know, if he's fighting Jojo Diaz one year and he's fighting Tug another year, and he misses fighting no-hopers in that year, who cares? I mean, who cares? You know, I mean, we miss a no-hoper fight. I mean, in other words, I care who I care who people are getting caught up on this activity thing. I mean, if you're fighting 3 no-hopers in a year, I don't care that you fight 3 times in a year. That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, you fight 3 good guys in a year, that means something to me. So it matters who you fight. So I'm just saying, now Russell is overdue to fight, but it's who you fight. I mean, he's also fought Lomachenko in the past. I mean, you know, it's not like he's fought nobody. So, you know, if he's due. You know, you got to figure he's going to come back, and then you've got Figueroa is going to move up. Fulton would join them. I mean, that's a lot of good fights. So I'm not saying Fulton doesn't have good fights with people like Roman. That's an excellent fight. There's other guys there. He could do that as well, but I'm with you. I mean, we just had a great fight between Fulton and Figueroa, and I think it's clearly even better than that. I mean, to me, the best fights I've seen this year, and they're having some great ones. I mean, Fury Wilder 3, Glanton and Apochi, Kambosos and Lopez, and Fulton Figueroa. You know, hipsters can go crazy, but I don't see the Estrada Gonzalez 2 being on the level of those 4 for me right there. So when people then want to stick that in there and say that's better than Fury Wilder 3 or something, I mean, I think you're crazy. I'll go that far with that. I mean, you know, you saw these fights too, Chris. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that? Yeah. I mean, I think these fights are better than that one. I mean,
and I'll tell you, Estrada's like one of my favorite fighters of this this current generation, I guess you'd say. I love him to death, but I agree. I just, there was a lot of punches thrown, but it just didn't seem like either guy really got hurt. Nobody hit the canvas.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say, well, you know, nobody got really hurt in this one, but clearly Fulton was getting at least clearly buzzed. You could see it, you know, it was very obvious. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think that's kind of the Chocolatito thing. People love him. I love him, but you know, we all do, but I think it's just kind of like holding on to that, you know, holding on to that. That happened in March, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I like those guys myself, but I saw it just the way you described it. I mean, a lot of punches thrown, but I don't even mind articulating why. I mean, a lot of punches thrown, but to me, a great fight's got to have like that seesaw momentum where you're really on the edge of your seat. I mean, that fight had a lot of punches thrown with nobody in trouble, no knockdowns. I know there was no knockdown in Fulton Figueroa, but, you know, Fulton was getting stung, and you know, that just, I got to say it. I mean, that was just a more intense action, and, you know, Figueroa was banging hard. I mean, Fulton, you know, hung in there, but I just think it was a better fight. I mean, you know, the Lopez Kambosos was great. You know, Apochi Glanton was great with the guys just landing hellacious bombs. Both guys getting rocked back and forth. I mean, you know, that's edge of your seat type drama. I mean, Estrada, you know, Gonzalez 2 to me was a good fight, a good close fight, good close competitive fight. A lot of punches thrown, no real dramatic turns in the momentum where both guys were in trouble or anything like that. So, you know, good fight, but I just think, like you said, it's in March, and we've been fortunate to see a lot of. I mean, these are some good fight of the year contenders, and you know, even it was an 8-rounder, but it is worthy of mention that Ordino or Adarno Ortiz fight was just. I mean, that was a hell of a fight. I mean, really for me. That's right in with those other ones. I mean, but just, you know, an 8-rounder, and you know, you don't know how many people saw it, but that, I mean, that was an unbelievable. That Ortiz Adorno fight was an unbelievable fight. Great fight. So there were some there were some great ones. We're in December now, so it's time to start collecting them. But those are the ones that are sticking out for me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And as far as the undercard goes, I mean, Antonio Russell Jr., who's, not maybe kind of the lesser of the Russell clan, in there with Santiago. And this, if you want to, see where a guy's at, this is a good fight to figure that out. I think it could have been pretty close to 2-1 after 4. There was a lot of good back and forth. Like I said, this is a really good test. It did seem like Santiago in the second half started landing the better shots when they'd exchange. Russell at times was busier, at times was behind his jab. But Santiago, man, he just kept coming and coming. It was a fun fight. It was a good fight. Yeah. And 5-5 would have been just fine for me. 95-95, 2 scorecards had it 96-94, so that's 6-4 anyway. Russell did outland him 148-122. In the body work, 51-23. Was that Santiago? I can't remember, but just a fun, good fight, and really got tested. And then Aleem and Baez, this was a good fight too. I know Aleem said that some of the time off bothered him or whatever, but this for me was pretty razor tight too. I'm trying to look at my scorecard and how I exactly had it. We had 95, 95, and 2 96, 94s. I'm trying to see what I added up mine to be, but I did think Aleem was doing enough busy work, was getting the better shots off for the first few rounds. But Baez, I gave him, the second round, I think he may have been getting the better shots off in that one. But, for a second there, Baez wasn't able to come forward. I thought Aleem was holding them back because that's usually Baez's thing. But then all of a sudden, he started landing his left hook. He started landing right hands. And I think that last minute, looking at it, fourth round, he started coming alive. And he started putting some rounds in the bank to an extent. Maybe you could give him one from 5 to 7. I gave him the 8th. I thought he started landing some really good hooks. A competitive fight, maybe a little bit more competitive than some thought. There was a big right hand late in that fight as well by Aleem. I did think the better shots were Baez in the 10th round. So I think I had it 6-4. Now I'm looking at about 6-4 for Aleem. So, there were a fair amount of people down on this performance. By the way, 90-36 to the body for Aleem. I wasn't as down. Now, don't get me wrong. Maybe because he looks so damn good that our expectations in the bar has risen from him. And, he got hit plenty. Baez is a tough character and all that. So he wasn't at his 100% best. But I got to admit, I didn't see this really disappointing performance that I noticed later on boxing Twitter, saw some YouTube channels talking about it, heard a couple of podcasts say that too, and I thought, I guess I wasn't as down on Aleem after this, but it was a competitive fight. Like I said, a really good triple header on Saturday night, Showtime.
Yeah, now I thought for me, that was a setback for Gary Antonio Russell. I actually liked him a lot going in.
Yes.
I actually thought Santiago, the way he came on, like you said, in the second half, and he really came on strong, really landing good power shots too, and just aggressive, really going for it. And he was doing it long enough in the fight. I thought really he should have gotten the decision in that fight. I mean, I didn't think Russell won that fight. So I thought it was a really big setback. Maybe he'll be fortunate people forget about it, but I thought he was getting himself in good position. you know, considering some of the people PBC have now, and a good opportunity for him on Showtime. You know, he had the previous opportunity with Rodriguez, ended quick in that headbutt, and that looked to me like Rodriguez didn't want. I mean, Rodriguez didn't want to go forward with the fight with Neary when Neary didn't make the weight initially, and that's his right. But he looked like when he got that headbutt in the first round with the Gary Antonio Russell, he looked like he wanted that over. He didn't have any interest in that going on. So just saying, like, I was looking at Russell as pretty formidable. And, you know, I just thought he got pushed around in this fight by Santiago, and Santiago was landing the better power shots, the harder shots. Looked to me like he did enough to win it, didn't get the decision, but I think Russell's going to have to hope that people kind of forget about this performance, because I thought he was very fortunate to get a win out of it. Didn't look good at all. The Aleem, now, you know, full disclosure, I was watching Kambosos Lopez at the same time, and obviously with the drama that was happening there, I just had to take my focus off the Aleem fight some. I like watching things live because I just always feel like I just get a better take on it. I've always felt that way. So I really didn't want to miss any of the Kambosos Lopez. So with Aleem, you know, I wasn't focused the full 10 rounds like I normally would be. I did kind of see it like you from what I did see. Didn't think Aleem looked particularly bad or anything. So I didn't see anything negative, but again, I wasn't as focused as I usually would have been because of the Kambosos Lopez being on simultaneously and heating up. But only thing I'd note is, you know, I've liked the way Aleem's looked. I like him a lot. I don't think, you know, the win he came away with here, I'm with you, any reason to particularly get down on him based on what I've seen. But I think what you got to keep in mind with him that people haven't been discussing, they kind of forget it with the lower weights, even though fighters, just like humans, you know, get longer, athletic lifespans get a little longer with, you know, nutrition, technology, medicine, etc. With that understood, Aleem's kind of old for 122, even though he hasn't had his one big fight
Very
yet.
True.
Yeah, and you know, when a guy is that age at that weight, you know, he's just, I think even just come. Oh,
there you go. I kind of lost you there for a second. You're back now.
Okay, I was just going to say, people may not realize, you know, this is not a 21 or 22-year-old, 122-pound prospect. You know, this
right.
is a guy, you know, who's, you know, getting ready to get on the wrong side of 30 soon. And, you know, for 122 pounds, even though people are defying time a little better than they used to in boxing and athletics, still a lot of the rules apply. And, you know, in general, in those lower weights, you're going to have a tougher time, you know, having the impact in your later 20s and your 30s compared to other weights. And Aleem's already pretty old for the weight. So, you know, he came away with a win, and he's got to hope that PBC can get him a big 122-pound fight really next. He probably needs to get that fight.
Yeah, that's a good call. There's no point in there. And, yeah, if they would have gave that to Santiago, yeah, I definitely would not have, you know, definitely wouldn't have been complaining about it, that's for sure. So all in all, a really fun weekend. Now, obviously, we have some interesting fights coming up. Devin Haney on paper, just because Linares, you know, was obviously long in the tooth. Not that Diaz is like a top 5 135 with a bullet, you know, but he's a solid fighter. There's no doubt about it at 126, 130, and now 135. I'd say on paper it does seem like this is going to be, you know, Haney's biggest test. Some of the things that maybe Linares wasn't able to do, especially down the stretch when he had him hurt, JoJo might be able to do. You know, he brings some fairly smart pressure. He'll definitely he's pretty all-purpose when it comes to his offensive attack. I mean, he has, like many fighters, he likes, certain combinations and punches he likes throws. But I did notice when he's on anyway, even against a guy like Farmer, that's the thing about Diaz. He's very back and forth, up and down. This performance great, not so much. I made weight. Then I look good. Then I look mediocre. That's the thing that we can't forget about JoJo. But there's certain times in that Farmer and other fights where even mid-punch he can make it look like it's going to the body. Boom, nice hook to the head. He's a good fighter, solid fighter. I do think this is Devin Haney's toughest test. And, it'll be interesting to see. I really want to see him, not that I want to see him get hurt, but I want to see if Diaz does land something of note on Haney and how Haney reacts. Because what we saw in the Linares fight, yeah, of course you're going to hold when you're hurt at times. Get it. But it seemed like it was almost like, how many minutes were you hurt? And that's a problem too, maybe. And the fact that he was ducking down and tackling when it seemed like, all right, dude, are you still hurt now? Because why are you still holding? It was a weird, very amateurish move to me. Not the original hold because you're hurt. Not that at all. But that was some excessive, holding to the point where it felt like, man, did you recoup? Do you have recoupability at the highest level that you need to be an elite fighter? These are things that I hope continue to get answered. How do you see this fight breaking down? Because obviously the jab, some of the length, some of the skill that Haney can bring to the fight, I understand why he's the favorite, but it's not like he's fought a lot of top guys. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, this one, I thought Haney's performance against Linares in the ways you described was a bit strange, but I do agree with the people that were saying kind of in his favor that, Linares really wasn't winning a lot of rounds in the fight either. And I think that was true. In other words, there was that weird moment, like you said, when Haney didn't seem to respond well to getting tagged, but he hung on after that, and the decision was never in doubt. He really won the fight easily, except for that moment. But we expected he would have an even easier time with Linares, who just can't take a shot at all. Kind of was an indictment of Haney's power. We are at a point now where Haney is not, with Haney it's kind of going back and forth. Is this guy going to have some power? Is he going to be just a guy that generally can't score knockouts regularly and doesn't bring that much of a punch? You were kind of going back and forth with him. It's getting pretty clear now he's not that good of a puncher. So that kind of was a strike against him too. But in a sense, I think this is kind of a bridge too far for JoJo Diaz, because I was an early promoter of JoJo Diaz fighting Ryan Garcia. I'd said that a long while back, not because I thought he'd beat him or anything, just because I thought it would sell really well in California, that JoJo would bring all he had, give it all he had, and bring action. I didn't think he'd beat him. It wouldn't be really a winnable fight for him, but it'd be a big seller, and I think it'd be an action fight. Now, Garcia ended up out of it. He decides, it's in a way, it's to his credit. He wants to fight a top contender in Devin Haney at lightweight, and I'm sure they're not foolish that he's getting a good paycheck for it, or I don't think they would have done it. It's probably been worked out well with Hearn and DAZN that Golden Boy's having him do this, and he's agreeing to do it. But with that said, I just don't think it's, besides the fact that Haney's not that good of a puncher, I just don't think it's a good style matchup for him, because Haney's got decent size for the weight. Yep. He's a good boxing skill, and goes wrong here at least Ryan Garcia, he's big for the weight, but at least he had been fighting at 130 pounds a little bit. Haney's been a lightweight the whole time, good size for the weight. And Diaz, spent the bulk of his career as a featherweight. See, I always think the weight gets overrated, but to me, this is a real weight jump. In other words, yeah, he was just fighting at 130, but Diaz, he established his pro career as a featherweight. Now he's fighting as a lightweight. It's just one jump of an original weight class, but that's where it's a real weight jump. So here's where I draw the line. When it's a real original weight class jump, the weight matters. So you look at that as a factor. And Diaz couldn't punch as a featherweight. So I know what you're saying about Haney with the chin and Linares, but this is where this is good for Haney because this is a guy that can't hurt him. And I will go that far. I mean, Jojo Diaz, Haney's chin's glass if Jojo Diaz is going to hurt him at lightweight. But I don't even think Haney's chin's that bad. So, Jojo Diaz, for the most part, wasn't even hurting featherweights. He's not hurting anybody at 130, and, he's certainly not hurting anybody at 135 pounds. So that's off the table, and Haney can box. So, I don't see any path for Diaz to win by knockout. And Diaz, like you said, I like the way you described him. He can put intelligent pressure on. He really first started doing that more with the Gary Russell fight. Did it well.
Yep.
Lost a competitive fight. Clearly lost in a competitive fight. But, you look at him coming up and his amateur career. He was a U.S. Olympian. He's got a lot of boxing skill. Really at heart, he's a boxer. He's been doing the pressure thing more since the Russell fight. It works for him. It is entertaining. But the problem with when he does that, he's not defensively irresponsible or taking unnecessary shots when he does it because he's got skill, but he can't punch. So, when you have a guy who's putting pressure on that can't punch, you got to be then like a volume machine. And he's really not that. He's more of a guy he's got boxing skill and he throws, but, he has to back off. You watch his fights closely, he'll, like you said, with his kind of up and downs, like he'll have the spurts when he throws that look good, and then he's got to back off. You saw that in that Rakhimov fight. I thought the draw was fair. I didn't think he lost it, but he has those good moments where he throws and then he has to back off a little bit. So in other words, he's not like a swarming pressure fighter even when he puts the pressure on. He's going to be throwing some body shots, but he's not going to be hurting you. And he's not one of those guys that's like a hurricane, So, if he was one of those guys, you might think, well, maybe if Haney's a little off or something and he can just out hustle him. But to me, Diaz isn't even that. So, and I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like the guy, but he's at lightweight now again. Bulk of his career at a featherweight. First big fight was as a featherweight against Gary Russell Jr. Now he's taking on a legit lightweight in Devin Haney. I think that is a big size and power disadvantage for him. Now, he's tough. He's shown a good chin already, even though he's going up to lightweight. I don't think Haney's going to hurt him. Haney hasn't shown that kind of power so far, even with JoJo moving up. So I just see this fight being a clear distance decision win for Haney. JoJo has shown he'll give it all he's got. He is an entertaining fighter, and he's got skill. He'll give it. Got to go with the British term. JoJo's going to give this one a go, and that's what I thought he'd do against Ryan Garcia. He'll give it a go, but he's not going to win. So I think decision Haney on this one.
Yeah, I agree. As long as Haney's not trying to, not prove a point. Of course he's trying to prove a point, but like not trying to get too loose with it and try to, do something that's out of his character. I don't see him doing that, by the way. And just the skill level and the reach alone, 71 to 60, like 6 or 64.
Yeah.
Like Diaz has some short ass arms, and
exactly.
I just don't think the skill, the foot movement, the hand speed, the jab. I just don't think he's going to be able to. I don't think Haney's going to be there to be beaten up in the trenches and all that. I don't see that at all. I'm with you. I think Haney wins comfortably, but it is a good measuring stick. He's coming off a good win. Like you said, especially in the second half, he did look good against Diaz or look good against Russell. He won some rounds late in that fight, but and that was his big first major step up. And he's kind of up and down all around. He does have weight issues, like I mentioned. So. Yeah, I agree. I think, but it's really cool that Diaz took this fight when he had the Ryan Garcia fight there for a second. A lot of people will be like, I'm just going to wait for the Ryan Garcia fight. And, and also shouts out to, DAZN, Eddie Hearn, for putting up the money to make it match, I think a little over what he was going to get. So it guaranteed, hey, this is a legit fight and a legit offer. So we got to,
right.
And it was kind of thrown together pretty fast, considering.
Oh, definitely. I think I agree. I think that's an excellent point. It's good what DAZN and Hearn did to give Diaz the money where he didn't make a business decision to pass on us and wait for Garcia. Because, as you pointed out, I was just thinking about it a little more, and I was wondering, but, you're right. I mean, Diaz is in the lightweight top 10 of transnational, in the back half of it, but he earned it. He's in there. Haney's at the top part. And, Linares, he had gone to 140, gotten KO'd in one. He was not a legit top 10 guy at the time he fought Haney. He hadn't worked his way back in. And this is, in other words, really on paper, in actuality, this is Haney's toughest test in terms of how a fighter is regarded going into a fight with him. So it is a good fight like that, and it's two legitimate top 10 lightweights at this point. So that's good. Anytime we get a fight like that, that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about how, we basically it feels like we almost have the quarterfinals at lightweight going on right now. Spreading around these quarterfinals, and hopefully we can get some semifinals and finals. And like you said, we got a late entry into the tournament, and his name is George Kambosos, and he's now got a high seat in the tourney too. He must have known somebody or something like that, because we can't count him out. So obviously Sunday night, Gervonta Davis and Isaac. What is it? Isaac? What is it?
It's actually, I guess, Isaac Cruz. He actually pronounces it Isaac Cruz. I sometimes forget that myself.
Yeah, for some reason. I remember I had it after maybe his last fight, and I just forgot how to say Isaac Cruz. That's obviously the main event. The undercard, Eduardo Ramirez and Miguel Mariaga opens it up. Derevyanchenko and Adames. I'm really looking forward to that fight. And then Fundora and Garcia. There's plenty to say about the main event as far as, should this type of main event not just be, it should be on just Showtime or whatever instead of pay-per-view. And I get that, that part of it. I totally understand that. It is what it is. It's the nature of the business right now. And like you said, Espinoza and company and CBS as well, they're not, they're obviously making a little buck on this, you know what I mean? And hey, these type of, sometimes this helps the budget in general, so we maintain this good schedule too. So I guess that plays into it. So I can understand how people on the outside go, you know what? Cruz had a nice knockout, like a surprising knockout over Magdanello, and then he looked mediocre, and what's this being on pay-per-view? I get that part, but the fact that the fact is, the reality is pay-per-view's here and it ain't going anywhere. So at least they hooked up the undercard. I'll say that. And there are going to be, Gervonta does bring in some form of like, hey, I just like Gervonta and like three other guys type of semi-casual, maybe the common fan. Not necessarily the casual like we talk about, but the common fan who I'm going to watch, 6 to 10 fights a year, but Gervonta's my guy, so I'm going to at least stream it. But I will say this, they did hook up the undercard. I mentioned earlier, it's starting an hour early because it's on Sunday. The SEC Championship, which starts at 3 Central, 4 Eastern, that's on CBS. Number 1 Georgia, number 1 Alabama. I really hope that we get a commercial for this fight during that. And CBS NFL Sunday, they can run commercials there. So I get some of this. Like I said, going head-to-head on a Sunday night with football, we'll see how that works. But by the time 10 o'clock rolls around my time Central, if that game's not a game, the ratings aren't going to go up from there. They're only going to go down. So maybe there is if you get in right when the fight ends, you do have like 15 or 17 million homes watching. So maybe they're trying to get something off that too. I don't know exactly, but the Sunday, we've now run into a couple of these Sunday, and back in the day it could be a Tuesday. You know what I mean? Some of the biggest fights that people go, really? That was on a Thursday? That was on a Tuesday? That was on no, yeah, dude, it was midweek, type of stuff. Yep. But I'm glad that they hooked up the undercard with entertaining fights. But as far as Isaac Cruz goes, once again, it's a quarterfinal. I think we got to realize that a lot of people don't know this guy, but it is a quarterfinal type 135 fight. Who knows what's next? But this isn't some run-of-the-mill complete chump or anything that they just, he was going to be on this undercard anyway, which I do think that's very smart when, we had to do that during COVID a lot. Showtime had the backup opponents. This really helps because he was already in camp. But as far as just stylistically, I think this has a chance to be a banger, and I think maybe in the first couple rounds we're actually going to see a tad bit kind of like we did for different reasons in the last fight with Tank. We might see a more responsible, maybe trying to show his skills a little bit and see what this Cruz is going to bring before they just bang it out. How do you see this fight playing out? And Cruz does pack a punch, and he's coming to take your lunch. He really is. He's trying to beat you up. We'll see if it works. It is going to be funny that he's actually, was it Gamboa? This might be his first or second guy that's shorter than Tank, because Tank's a small guy for his weight class, height-wise.
Yeah, I think, first you got to look at the pay-per-view part. I see it basically like you do on this one. It's a fight that in an ideal world, it should be a Showtime card, just on regular Showtime, but, and you don't like the 74.95, but I got to admit, as this card's been coming closer, the Sunday night thing is a more watched night of TV. It's when people settle in for TV. That's how that got started in the U.S., and it's still the most watched night of TV. So even with NFL on, and, people have already seen two games that day, or if they wanted to, seen two games. So even though the Sunday night's the primetime game, I mean, you've already seen a lot of football that day. So I think it works like that. I've found myself looking more forward to this card than I thought when they got it signed with the Sunday night thing. I don't like having to pay for it, but they put an excellent undercard together, and I'm really looking forward to it now because in the main event, kind of picking up with what you said, I think there's kind of two things that intrigue me about the matchup. First, at least Isaac Cruz is a legit top 10 lightweight, so he's no chump in that sense. He brings power. Anytime you get in with a guy with power, even if you're a big favorite, that's a little more dangerous because we know boxing can always change with one shot. And the fact that I think in the last two fights, and I've said this when we've talked about Cruz going into those fights, I just think he didn't get the bigger knockouts because he was fighting taller guys. They were in more of a survival mode. It's not going to be the case with Gervonta Davis. Of course, he's much better than those guys, but he's a shorter guy himself. So Cruz doesn't have to punch up in this fight. So I think if Cruz doesn't get caught first and, he actually is in position to start throwing some of his bombs, I think his bombs are going to land with more authority. So I think, Gervonta Davis has tremendous power and speed. I think he's always going to be looking to take you out. But I think you're right. I mean, I think he's probably going to start this fight out boxing a little bit. And then, it's going to be a question of, can Cruz then just get off his bombs before he takes too many hard shots himself? And that makes it exciting. It looks like it could be a really exciting start to this fight. I mean, I could see this fight ending in a round or two, but being an exciting round or two, because I think Davis is 5'5.5", and Cruz is maybe 5'4". But I mean, Cruz is going to have to be punching way up on Davis. So if he gets close to him and he unloads, I think he's capable of hurting Davis. So that makes it interesting to me. The thing that I'm going to kind of stick to my own take on this, but I think it's been kind of proven out with Davis with some other fights at the weight, and like we just talked about Lopez, and when he hasn't looked as good. Now, maybe that's been at 130, but still, that's years ago, and he's even older now, and he just fought at 140. I think I love fights in the traditional weight classes. PBC's got a lot of welterweight money. I know Davis is short for the weight, but he's got the speed. I think his power carries. He's already 27 years old. I don't think his style is a style of longevity. I think he's a guy that is relying on speed, explosiveness. He's not tall. He to me needs to get his biggest money fights now. So what I'm getting to is where I see a possible mistake. We're going to obviously find out Sunday night. But in the analysis of it, I mean, coming down in weight, a guy like Davis, after just being at 140, he had problems making the 130 at times. Looked terrible in that Fonseca fight when he had weight problems. Fonseca went with him much longer than he should have. And that was a blown opportunity because that was on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard. So, this seems to be now he's headlined a pay-per-view where he's coming down in weight to lightweight. And this to me is also, and I think this really is part of it. I mean, this is a crazy over-reliance, again, on the alphabet stuff. I mean, because I really don't see much of another reason. If it wasn't for that, you'd do it at a catchweight or something. In other words, Davis is cutting all the way. Yeah, he's cut. I don't think this point's
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
well, still take the fight. Rollies would have taken it if it was 138 or something.
That's exactly. I mean, Cruz is going to take the fight. I mean, you can make it again nowadays with stuff. You can make it a 138.5 pound 12-round fight or something. Headline or 12 rounds. But to just, I mean, because they really are. And Steven Espinosa, to his credit, has admitted he knows this. I mean, and he's the head of Showtime Boxing. To just have to sell the fight with this WBA World Lightweight title, which is WBA regular, which, come on, they're all a joke, but this is even a bigger joke. It just is, let's face it. It's nothing against Tank Davis' ability, but it just is. To feel a need to go with that as a marketing tool for the fight, to make him, which with that as a marketing tool, at least going into Sunday. Now, let's see, because what happened Saturday, because, it wouldn't shock you with this, because let's face it, the WBA World doesn't mean squat, the WBA regular World Lightweight title, when Kambosos camp. So, like in other words, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, even though some people would go crazy, but who cares about that belt anyway? Like if I'd be more care about the competitiveness if it affected Cruz, but it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world. I'm getting ready for this kind of thing. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world for Davis to weigh 137 on Saturday or something like that, and the WBA World regular goes out the window. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I want to get ready for possible scenarios. I'm just saying I think this going down in weight, which really just can't be justified other than for this WBA World thing. Because, again, even if you were going to target the other lightweights, you could still fight this fight at 138.5 or something like that. So I am going to say that even if it works, I think that's a mistake. I don't think that's worth the risk of this WBA regular World thing as a marketing chip. So I think that's where maybe there's an opportunity for Cruz. If Davis does have problems now cutting back down to 135, in other words, maybe he makes it and he is just weight drained. It's not impossible him coming off of a fight where he fought at 140 against Barrios. I thought he'd be going in the other direction at age 27. So I'm looking at that too. I mean, he is in a Lopez position to me here. I mean, is there trouble making this weight? What's the camp like? And then maybe if somehow Cruz survives early and he gives Davis a tough fight and starts going later, does that start playing a role? So I'm looking at that too. I mean, I would think just on the skill levels of the two, and because Davis has the power and the speed and better boxing skill, that Davis will knock him out early in the first few rounds, but maybe there's a chance Cruz makes it exciting by landing a bomb before that. That's probably the way I see this going, but I think with Gervonta Davis, you got to look at the weight thing, especially coming off of 140, because again, it was the WBA regular stuff, and Barrios good opponent, but you know, you got to figure part of the fight in that 140 was to not have to make the lower weight again. I mean, they don't talk about those reasons, but you got to figure that was part of it. So to come back down to lightweight now, I don't know. I mean, that part could be the X factor here, and we're just going to have to see what goes on at the scales on Saturday and maybe start hearing about the camp and the weight cut before we get an idea for that. But, you know, as far as Cruz goes, we haven't heard about any problems with him making the weight in the past. So I think it's likely that Davis is going to get an early knockout that'll probably be exciting, but he'll probably have to use his head move and box a little bit more, make sure Cruz doesn't land one of those big shots on him first. But Cruz has got enough power, and he's not going to be punching up. It's a guy more his size. That's going to make it interesting as long as it lasts.
It's interesting because I don't think I'm not sure if the 140 was about weight. I think it was just about being able to say, hey, to people that don't know that 140 is unified or undisputed, that, you know, he could say now he's a three-weight champion. But I do see your point about going back down. Now, I'll say this. In the last couple of weigh-ins, one was 130 for Leo Santa Cruz last October.
Right.
The next one was 140. I know that the last few weigh-ins, he has even showed people the weight early, and obviously a scale it wasn't the official scale. So, but the point is, he's making that weight at least 135. He's just more disciplined, basically. It sounds like. However, so my point is, if it was just the 140 was just about weight, they probably would be doing this as a catch weight now. You know what I mean? But you make a good point about going up, feeling healthy at that weight, and then going back down. That is a good point. Now, he did the 135 to 130 before, and he looked pretty good against Cruz. But, yeah, it's something to, you know, it does seem like on the outside, but we don't know until they step on the scale always. A lot of fighters can tell you this and that, and the camp went great, this and that, and all of a sudden, you know, they're getting shoulder surgery after the fight. And you're like, oh, or something was wrong with their knee, and they couldn't they couldn't run as long. So they did have problems making the weight or discipline. It does seem like he's turning the corner on discipline and weight and all that, but in the same breath, the going back down, that might dip in. And like you said, we won't know till Friday. And I got it just like you. I don't see this fight going past 6 rounds. I think it could be a quick knockout. I also think it could just be 2.5 rounds of just fun-ass big shots, and then boom, Davis knocks him out. But I do think, like we both mentioned, that we're going to see a little bit more skill. Not that we don't see skill out of Tank, but a little bit more patience, a little bit more tactical, moving his head, like you said, being on the move, trying to set up shots. And it's funny because I remember when he went to the UK after his big win against Pedraza, and he actually, against Pedraza at times he actually did show, but it was one of the Walsh brothers, Liam Walsh, and that was a quick fight, right? But I'll say this, that's probably, I'm thinking back, Pedraza, that one, and there's not too many. Well, the Cuellar, he actually did set that up and go to the body, but he wasn't like moving around and stuff like that. But that's the only fight I can really think where he tried to show the other parts of his game. And I think just with this style, I think you're going to have to do that for at least a round or two to just see what the hell Cruz is going to bring and try to time him and everything. And it's not like, we could say, oh, he's short-armed too, but, it's not like Tank has got a 173-inch reach or nothing like that. So I think it's just going to be one of those just bang it out, fun fights to watch once it heats up. But a couple of the undercard fights I'm looking forward to as well. I do wonder where we're at with Derevyanchenko. You know, he took this time off, and I think he needed it because he had been in a pretty tough fight with Jacobs, a war with Golovkin, took a lot of shots against Charlo. You know, so I think Derevyanchenko's at that point of his career where you're like, let's make sure that he's going to be okay here because, you know, how much did it basically take out of him, all these tough fights, you know, losing competitive fights. Some people thought he did enough to beat Golovkin. I thought he cleanly lost to Charlo, but still, he was in the fight and whatnot. The Cloquet fight, he was winning, and then Cloquet, you know, made a run back. He ended up, you know, it was a split decision with Jacobs. And even before that, to an extent, you know, he's taken some shots. There's no doubt about it. So he's been off for a while. So that's good. But then again, like I said, I kind of want to know where he's at. Whereas the guy he's fighting, Adames, he did fight in the summer. Obviously, we know he lost to Teixeira in a very competitive fight. He's fought basically just bets there. So I do favor Derevyanchenko, but there is a chance that he could just be a little worn-torn, a little, you know, long between the two. Even though he's not the super old guy, he doesn't have a bunch of fights, but he's fought a lot of talent. And also Fundora and Garcia, I can't wait for that. And that's a WBC junior middleweight eliminator to fight Erickson Lubin. Whoever wins this fight's going to fight Lubin, and then whoever wins that fight is the new mandatory at WBC for 154. So sign me up for all that stuff.
Yeah, this undercard is really good for what we get nowadays on pay-per-view, especially. I like all the fights. I mean, Derevyanchenko and Adames, I like this one a lot. Adames, you know, started out as a welterweight, then he's been fighting at 154. Now he's going to fight at middleweight. But he's a strong guy, and he always had trouble making the weight at welterweight. He's got good power. He's strong. I actually think, you know, when I saw this signed, I thought, yeah, he can handle this weight. I mean, you know, it is a full weight class jump now for him. Like I talked about Jojo Diaz, because he fought the bulk of his early career as a welterweight. He's been at 154 for a while, but now he's at middleweight. So he's jumped basically a full original weight class. But he's a strong guy with power, so I think he can do that. Derevyanchenko, even though he has also, people forget, early in his career, not only did he not fight at 154, he fought fights at super middleweight, 168, but he settled in as a middleweight. So he's not tall for the weight. He's short for the weight, but he's always been a strong guy in that sense, where, you know, he's fought at middleweight, 168, but he's not a real tall guy. So again, Adames moving up, he doesn't have to worry about a big height disadvantage. So I'm not that concerned about that in this one. But I think, you know, Derevyanchenko, I'm looking at what you're looking at. I mean, the concern is he took a lot of shots against Jacobs. He took a lot of shots against Golovkin. I did think he did enough to win that fight, even though he got dropped. That knockdown probably was the difference. But I thought he did do enough to beat Golovkin. He really punished Golovkin to the body in that fight. And then Charlo clearly beat him. He took a lot of shots, but he overcame a rough start to make that fight, you know, really competitive. But he clearly lost, but it was competitive. But took a lot of shots in those three fights against tough opposition. And even though he hasn't had a lot of official straight-out pro fights, he had a lot of fights in the World Series of Boxing, which was kind of like a way for people that wanted to stay amateur just have pro fights. So, and you know, he's in his mid-30s, so you do have to watch that the odometer has expired for him. That's a concern. Probably the main concern going into this one, because Adames can punch. I think he'll even be able to carry power up to middleweight. And Derevyanchenko, you know, he was dropped against Jacobs, was dropped against Golovkin, was dropped against Charlo. So I think with Adames is going to be a guy looking for a knockout here, and that's his path to win. But Vayanchenko, he's always had that nickname, the technician. I think it's appropriate because he is a really skilled guy, even though he's not a real tall, moving boxer kind of guy. There's a lot of subtle skills to what he does. One of the things that I think when you watch him, you really got to look at that you don't see with every fighter is, I mean, the dude can throw about every punch in the book well. So the technician name fits appropriately. And even though he takes shots, he's got sound defense. He's not reckless defensively or anything like that. But I just think his skill level, amateur pedigree, punch variety. Adames not overly skilled. He's kind of a strong power guy. Not a real lot of skill there. So I think Derek Vayanchenko is going to end up having too much skill for him. And he should be able to work a decision, I think. Vayanchenko's power's not bad. He's not a huge knockout puncher, but he's not bad either. Probably has enough to hurt Adames, but Adames is strong. I think I'm looking at a distance fight here with Derek Vayanchenko having a little too much skill and winning a decision.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. We do have another Spaniard. A lot of folks are like, "Hey, watch out for this Spaniard coming in." Just ask Mikey Garcia, Sergio Garcia, 33-0, 14 KOs. But I mean, second to last guy he fought, not much there. He has Rabichenko. Ted Cheeseman, I think, a couple of years ago, I remember that one. Actually, let me look here. But even before Cheeseman, it was like he was, he was still in development mode. Man, the scorecards were all over the place on that one. 2 119 109s and a 115 114. I forgot about that. But I do remember watching those two fights of him. He's pretty green to an extent, but, to be honest, it's not like Fundora has fought like just the top level guys or whatever, but he's been in there with the Gallimores and the Cotto and Kota and Jamandi Clark was a good fight for him. So he's definitely had his ups and downs. He did take that draw, like I mentioned, that happened actually here at the Armory. How do you see that one playing out? Do you like Fundora just to kind of outwork him and it just be a spirited fight until he kind of overwhelms him?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Fundora. I've really liked the development, and he likes to fight in an entertaining style. But what's very unique and dangerous about him, and I really can't think of any fighter like him. I mean, as long as I've been watching boxing, it makes it intriguing. Where he's devastating is he gets up close to you, and he's got that. You just actually do have to say just freakish height for the division, but what he does is he's not like a Thomas Hearns where he he uses the jab and then from the outside he gets all that leverage on his punches like a whip. But what he's been doing in recent fights that's devastating is he does something different I've never seen before. He gets up close to you, and then he gets tremendous leverage on the uppercuts, just ripping him up with all that leverage. With that height, he's got like a whip, and you just see guys just crumbling. When he hits them with those shots, you can see the legitimate effect, and he's gotten better and better at doing that. And I think it's going to take somebody really good to withstand that the way he's going right now. And a lot of knowledgeable European boxing fans I've seen really even a couple of years ago, they like Garcia a lot. And I got to admit, with the Sandor Martin, and then, just Kiko Martinez with the Galahad, you are taking Spanish boxing a little more seriously than you might have before that. So, it is a bit of an eye-opener. You got to be fair. But I just think, some people aren't a believer. But I am a believer in what Fundora is doing. It's something very unique. Never really seen it before, but I'm a believer in it. He's just leaning, coming at opponents with volume, but he's getting leverage on those shots that he's whipping up with that height he's got. And fighters they're just not withstanding it. I mean, he's the only guy to stop Gallimore. Gallimore came back with a good win after that. So, Gallimore, it turns out, was not, people are saying, well, he's done. That's why Fundora stopped him. he was just at the end of the road, but he came back with a good win, so he wasn't done, and it was a stoppage win. So he's the only guy that stopped Gallimore, and Gallimore's very tough and can take a shot, and he got Gallimore out of there. So I think you got to really take that seriously. Like for example, I would submit, and again, I just talked about the Spanish. You gotta, with what Kambosos just did, you have to even take maybe a deeper look at a Tim Zhu. He hasn't fought any punchers yet, but his offense looks good, and seeing what Kambosos did, you say, hey, maybe you've got to look at Zhu even a little bit more than we were. But why I'm mentioning him is that I don't think Zhu's gotten anybody out of there as tough as Gallimore, and Fundora got Gallimore out of there, but I don't see people taking Fundora's offense serious enough, considering that factor. So I think it's going to be a coming out performance for Fundora on a pay-per-view here. I think he's going to get Garcia out of there doing what he's been doing. I think Garcia, even if he's good, I don't think he's good enough to hold off Fundora from doing that. I think it's going to take somebody better than him. And you mentioned possibility that the winner is going to fight Lubin, and if it is Fundora, I'm not sold on Lubin's chin. Not just because of the Charlo fight. He also got buckled by Gaucher, who's not a puncher. Even though he does have a good knockout win recently, still you watch his entire career, he's definitely not a puncher. So, I think that's tough for Lubin, if he's going to be in there but one fight at a time. I think Fundora is going to make a statement here against an undefeated opponent, he's fun to watch. He's entertaining whenever he gets in there, so that's good about being under this undercard. And then Ramirez and Mariaga. Ramirez really been coming on lately with the power. Looks good. Looks like a late bloomer type of guy. And Mariaga's got some power, but not much else. That'll be fun while it lasts, but Ramirez should get him out of there. So a lot to look forward to on this card Sunday night. I find myself, I don't like having to pay for it, but I do really find myself looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is one of those things that, I think people forget, not just in the 2000s, some of these, Roy Jones and Bobby Gunn was on paper. You know what I mean? Like, there's fights that I think people forget that did under 100,000 in the 90s that you just don't realize they weren't either around or they weren't paying attention or whatever. But there's some fights where you go, really? Why would they do that? It's like, I hear you, but there's we got up to 12 or 13. I think was the highest point that we got. I think that was just HBO actually. So we probably were we're probably higher than that in one of those years. I can't remember if it was 2006 or whatever, which year that was, 2005. Anyway, there's a lot of pay-per-views out there that are like pretty bad. So I do like that. Obviously, Cruz isn't going to cost a whole lot, and so why not? Okay, dude, this isn't somebody that he's just starting to like. If you watch Gervonta, if you watch some of these PBC fights. Maybe it snuck in there. He was on the Charlo card, right? Or was he on the? Maybe he was on the Santa Cruz. Yeah, he was on the Santa Cruz card. That's what it was. Santa Cruz tank.
Yeah,
that's what it was. On that one. And I don't know. It makes me laugh when people like complain all you want, don't buy it all you want, stream it, do whatever you're gonna do, but these same people will be buying Bobby Gunn and Roy Jones, and it's like, dude, you bought Bobby Gunn and Roy, like, come on, man, like, just don't, but they did hook up the undercard, and we always ask them to. We always ask them to do this, and then we're not going to sit here and be like, well, I don't care, I don't like the main event now. Because if the main event pops off and it's a 4 to 6 rounder, and then the undercard, I got news for you. Come early next week, we're going to be happy paid customers. You know what I mean? And that's just how it goes. So it is what it is. If you don't think Tank should be on, pay-per-view, then don't buy it. It's pretty basic. Any other items that you want to talk about? This was a nice long segment. Thanks for staying on long. Obviously, we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I think we're back to where we were in the, to me, the pay-per-view thing was just increasing to where it got too far up to around 2015, where PBC tried to reverse things by, getting things onto network TV, trying to rebuild, and now we're kind of going back to when we had all those pay-per-views. So, I mean, I agree that, this is kind of where we were back in 2015, and it had been building up since really about 1990, 1991, steadily up to that point. So we're kind of back there now. But yeah, I always do feel like you said, when they give you an undercard, you kind of feel like, okay. I mean, as a hardcore boxing follower, that is what I'm asking for. I want that. And I don't feel as ripped off when, they're trying to give me an undercard at least. So, and like you said, then if the main event's great, then people talk about that. But we're good. That only other thing to talk about it a lot, but probably it's coming up a lot this week in the boxing news. I mean, when the alphabet stuff's insane, and the alphabet stuff's insane, don't try to sort it out. The answer is to ignore the alphabets. I mean, I just think it's pretty simple. I mean, don't try to decipher WBC franchise from WBC World or WBA regular from WBA Super. Just ignore the alphabets. I mean, there's no sense, and you just maybe talk about it in terms of why a fight might be partially happening because of some alphabet mandatory order or something, but put that in the bottom of your article or something like that, and just ignore the alphabet stuff. I mean, intelligent people trying to make sense of it is just crazy. I mean, there's no sense to be made of it. So I'm always going to be on the side of ignore the alphabets, but I think this pay-per-view, at least entertainment value, Sunday night looks pretty good. I mean, the Jake Paul things have been entertaining. You got that coming up, and I didn't like it at first either, but now I'm thinking, New Year's Day, all heavyweights, quote unquote discounted price. I mean, I'm probably gonna end up reluctantly being all in on these.
All right, well, enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Chris, thanks for having me as always. Enjoy the fight.
Yes, sir. Take it easy.
Take care.
Yeah. All righty. Man. Oh, by the way, I did mean to anyone listening locally, and I do mean Minnesota, or it could be the 5-state region, the Upper Midwest, right? I'll tell my friends from other parts of the country, the 5-state region, what the fuck is that? It's the Dakotas, North and South, which obviously should just be one. Well, it should be the Dakotas, land, but that's further, right? And then it's Iowa and Wisconsin. Anyway, there is this show coming up this weekend if you're here locally in the cities at the Armory. I bring this up December 4th. It's at the Armory. And I bring this up. It's called I Am Legend. It's the I Am Legend Tour starring Rick Ross and Jeezy. Okay, and also it has 2 Chainz. Now I'm bringing this up because all the ticket proceeds from this event will go to the Circle of Discipline to help the youth. And the Circle of Discipline is a local gym. They actually just got a new spot in Minneapolis. And it's Jamal James. If you ever hear, COD during the fights, that's the Circle of Discipline. And it's obviously a gym you want to keep going, but he's got a major youth movement here, and he really is helping the city with this thing. And the city needs as much help as it can get right now. So, like I said, if you're in town, the tickets aren't crazy. If you like hip-hop, you got Jeezy, you got 2 Chainz, and Rick Ross. And it's, like I said, it literally, all the ticket proceeds from the event go to Circle of Discipline, which is just dope. Really, really cool. So just wanted to put that out there because it's, it's great. It's great like that. Okay, so I'm gonna get to. Let's see. Did I? What was I gonna do? I like Fundora. Fundora's gonna win the fight. I basically like all the favorites. I just think it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun undercard. I hope anyway. That's what I'm hoping. That's the big hope. Other than that, there is some news that I'll get to. I'll see if Portland wants to talk, and I'll actually send something to him right now. And so I'll go over a little bit of fight news. I was mentioning earlier in the show that Japan just put on a travel ban, right? They did put on a travel ban, and a lot of people are thinking, now Golovkin and Munguia is not going to happen, and that may be. Now there was still a travel ban, but you can get like a special exemption, like an athlete's exemption, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know where it exactly stands per se, but there was a fighter that's fighting over there soon, and he was able to get in there. Okay, so maybe that fight is not a done thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if Golovkin's even 85%, I think he wins that fight. But there was some other. I just can't remember the guy's name. I don't know why. It's just something. I can't remember the damn name. But there's also a fight recently made on Japanese New Year, which is usually a big date for them, and they're hoping he can go over. So, let's hope. Let's hope that gets done, because that would be we need these fights to keep going, because we want that fight to finally happen, and then whoever wins can hopefully fight some other middleweights. I don't know. Speaking of, though, the WBC, WBO, like I mentioned, this is official, that they have declared that the unified champion, Fulton, will have a singular, it sounds funny, singular joint mandatory. So the WBO and WBC both have Danny Roman as their number one guy. So they're basically first action of boxing sanctioning bodies starting to work together to not overload unified champions with multiple mandatories. So that is kind of cool. They usually say, you got a year now before your next one. Well, for the WBO and WBC, that'll be taken care of. So that is kind of dope. Plus, it's a good-ass fight. Now, obviously, that can be, that can be tampered with. That can be a little funky because it goes off ratings and rankings and all that stuff. So what's that actually mean moving forward? Will it help sometimes? I think it will. Other times, not so much. In fact, Andre, remember old boy Aleem Canali or whatever, Canali? He just fought not long ago. He put in a request to become the mandatory for Andre, and what do you know? The WBO has made him the middleweight. They called for the fight, which is kind of weird. Not that I don't like the fight or whatever, and more than likely Andre wasn't going to get a big fight anyway, unfortunately. But wasn't Liam Williams like in April his mandatory? Like, that part of it's weak. Hey, it may turn out to be a good fight, but that part of it's like, really? I mean, so in less than a year he's going to call another mandatory? Hopefully it's a good fight. Madrimov and Soro, WBA Eliminator on December 17th, the Zone. That's going to be a good fight. I do like that fight. Oh, here's a big one, guys. Amir Khan and Kell Brook. It's official. February 19th. Is that Sky Sports? I think it's Sky Sports. Portland, let me know if you're ready, okay? I did text you. Let me know if you want to jump in. If not, you're busy at work. That's cool too. I get it. I meant to say this. So there was some folks, and I mean media folks, not fans. I'm not going to rip fans for this at all. That's not their job to know. But there was multiple media folks that were trying to pile on the Teofimo Lopez side about the rematch clause. No rematch clause. Major. Like, how could you let that happen, you know? Actually, someone sent me this text. This was Michael Woods saying, I text Davis McWater asking if there's a rematch clause. I'm guessing there isn't because he didn't text me back. I need to hear why. But that's a bad rookie mistake if no. Person with leverage always gets what they want with those clauses. But he then got it cleared up because there is, when you go to, like, don't confuse it with the mandatory, right? Well, mandatories don't have rematch clauses. That's not true. Because the first example, people are going to say, well, look at Usyk. Usyk was a mandatory, and he had to do a rematch clause. The difference is it's a purse bid. And as we know, it's well known, it went to purse bid. So there is no rematch clause because someone bought the fight, and it's their fight. And so there isn't, you sign on to fight for that money at this place. And so you agree to whoever won the purse bid, then you agree and say, yep, I'm ready to go. You ready to go? Let's do it. You know, and you do it. So you don't do, like, I'm not saying that at some point, technically speaking, against the law, against the Ali Act is one thing, right? People break at times, right? Still. Or they at least don't challenge it much. But the point I'm trying to make is it was a purse bid. So this whole thing about piling on like he made this huge mistake, senior, that's ridiculous because you're literally, you can't. You can't do it. Like it's illegal to do that. That's part of it. So there was none of that. There was none of that. So you can't sit there and you can rip them if you want, but you'd be silly. Did I say this last week? I don't know if we got an exact. Well, it hasn't been officially now announced, but it does sound like Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano too. We know that's set, but it sounds like February 26th at the Toyota Center in Houston. Oh, another one, Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams. That has been postponed because didn't something happen to Williams, I think, to the January 29th. That's been rescheduled because Williams aggravated his shoulder, but I guess it can be treated without it. So, and he'll be fit for the new date. Interesting. So January 28th, that's a little bit of news, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you know what? Anthony Joshua had an interview with IFL TV where he was kind of all over the place. But they talked about step-aside money. And he said, it's funny because part of the interview he said, it's against my ethics. It's against my code. I would never do it. Blah, 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 blah. Said all this stuff. And then in perfect Anthony Joshua mode, he turns around and says, well, hold on now. Because he has there's a 3-point rule system to everything. Whether it's real estate or this or that, 3-point rule, and it's respect, and I want to be known as the guy who fought everybody, and all this stuff, right? But then he says, I don't completely rule out the step aside. He said, if the money's right, we have to look at it. But respect has a lot more value than just money, but I'll look at it. So he was like, it's against my code. I would never do that. But if the money's right, I may do it. That's just like, what? I just don't think there'll be enough money in it for him to do that. I could be wrong. Unfortunately, actually, this is an old tweet, but we know Ugas and Stanonius. The purse bid is scheduled for December 9th. The split will be 75-25 in Ugas's favor, and Butayev is who he has to face. I really hope that they could just kind of figure that out. Couldn't they just for once to make a great quality fight in Spence Ugas? Couldn't the WBA just be like, just, whatever. Just be like, hey, man, we're going to make him the super champ, and we'll have Stanonius and Butayev fight, and then the winner has to fight him, or get somebody else to fight Stanonius, and then that winner fights Butayev. So that's 2 fights there. By that time, they'll get the full belt. I understand they're reducing belts. It was their fault for having so many belts. So to take away Spence Ugas is just kind of bullshit. It's not kind of, it is. And it's funny, though, because someone made a point here. They're saying, well, Stanonius has never been a regular champ or an interim or super champ or anything. There's no title to reduce, Meanwhile, at middleweight, they have Murata unifying after not fighting for 2 years and being upgraded to super champ, ignoring Lara's request to consolidate the WBA, because Arislandi Lara was trying to fight Murata. And then all of a sudden, and Murata hasn't fight for a long time, and then, oh, no, we'll do this. Yeah, we'll have that. It's like it still is a pick and choose situation here. And it gets a little old. On that one. Here's Eddie Reynoso talking about Canelo Triple G. He said, I would like the Triple G fight here in Mexico, either Guadalajara or Mexico City. We're going to see what he says. Golovkin fights in December against Murata. And after that, we'll see if we can work something out in May. Eddie went on to say, one of the projects that we have is to try to fight in the UK or Japan or Dubai or China. That's what we want to do next in the career, fight around the world. So does that mean you're going to fight like in 3 or 4 straight times in different countries? I wonder how his fan base thinks about that, because they're not, some of them aren't going to be able to fly to Dubai to do it. Now, someone with good money, of course. But, when it comes to that, it's all about who he's fighting. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. If he wants to fight, more and more there are going to be fights going to Dubai. That's just how it goes, right? They're going to have to figure out the timing on that stuff, but that's pretty basic, right? In fighting in the UK, that would be huge. I'm sure DAZN would put up a pretty penny to have Canelo fight in DAZN, or in the UK, because obviously DAZN just launched there, and Canelo against someone solid would bring in subs there. My guess is they'd bring in more subs in the UK than they brought in here. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I could see that bringing in 1 million subs pretty much. So I'm not going to say easy, but so we'll see. If he has this, he could talk about fighting in China and other places, but with the zone, they may not have a lot invested here beyond Canelo, and that's true. They just re-up with Golden Boy, so that's pretty big. But they're heavily invested in a lot of other countries, Japan and Italy, and they have some pretty big rights. They're talking about buying BT Sport. I don't know exactly how that's going to go, because they already have contracts, and would the major soccer leagues want their sport to go to a streaming app, because that's not in the contract, that we already signed. And so it'd be kind of a mess to work that stuff out. But either way, they're heavily invested in a lot of different countries. So I do think some of this can happen. Now, go figure, Murata and Golovkin fighting in Japan, that's actually going to be on Amazon. It's going to be streamed on Amazon. Go figure, right? But either way, so they have a lot of, I think they have like almost, I know it's over 1 million. They may have over like 2 million now in Japan. Don't quote me on all this stuff. I don't remember exactly in Japan, but imagine if they got that on there. But, Murata has been fighting on free television there for a while, or for a little while anyway. But anyway, It really matters who he fights. That's what it comes down to. And I saw someone post this real quick. This is Rick Morana. Let me see. Virgil Ortiz's manager, right? And we know Virgil Ortiz. They talked about Virgil Ortiz and Avanesian, right, being called. And he said the buzz couldn't have lasted too long. He won't fight him next, if ever. Rick says, I'm Armenian, and I like this fighter a lot as well. But just being honest with you, Crawford, Spence, Ugas, Thurman, Garcia all sit ahead late next year. So he's not going to fight this dude. He's not going to fight Avanesian. So his manager, anyway, Virgil Ortiz, is not going to fight Avanesian. That's what his manager posted. We'll see. His manager posts a bunch of stuff. So I'm just saying, okay? I'm just saying. Okay, this is Breadman. We'll go a boxing Twitter segment, then we'll get out of here. I'll keep it short, guys. Notice this is Breadman. Notice the disturbing trend. Fighters get to a certain point, high six figures, and want to save money. The first person hit is the most important person, the trainer. If he was there to take 10% of your 1,000, then let him take 10% of the mill. He got you there. Karma is a patient gangster. He never misses. That's fair. You know what I mean? That is fair. Will Floyd and Heyman replace Cruz last minute, PBC style, because of the current vibes? What? Oh, are they? So they're saying they're going to – so PBC is afraid to fight Cruz, so they're going to replace them last minute PBC style. Because remember, Spence actually did tear his retina. That was fake, and they replaced it with Ugas, that type of thing. I'm actually happy they got a legit – I like this fight better than Rolly, but because of the vibes, I think they're talking about Lopez losing, so they get feed or something. Whatever. Don't know how the Crawford-Porter fight convinces you or makes you doubt he beat Spence. It was a 50-50 before. It's still a 50-50 now. I don't. Yeah, when you either have Porter up 5-4 or Crawford up 5-4 going to the 10th, that's the most rounds anybody's won off of him. So I agree. He stopped him. He should get a lot of credit for that. But I saw some other stuff that fundamentally sound behind a jab, bigger puncher that Spence can do, that could cause some major problems. So I've always leaned barely Crawford because of the versatility, but that was the first time we got to see him in with that high a level of fighter. And he lost a fair amount of rounds. Now, he didn't lose the fight. He knocked him, he TKO'd him, period. He gets all the credit for that. But I saw enough in there that I thought, interesting. Man, Spence got a way better jab, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this whole now, Crawford's going to stop Spence like it's easy. I don't get that. Okay, so thanks to guys like De La Hoya and Mayweather, especially Mayweather, fighters today are more businessmen than boxers. Sad at one did this for love and respect. Now these clowns run their careers in a ring like businessmen, and the only people that truly lose is the fans. So you're saying if you add up De La Hoya and Mayweather's resume, to choose these two fighters, of course you're going to choose Floyd because a lot of people hate Floyd, but De La Hoya and Floyd, talking about they were more businessmen than boxers, do you see the resume that both those guys have? Are you hating on them because besides Tyson, since Tyson, those were the two most popular guys, Oscar and Mayweather. And I got news for you. I love Pacquiao, but those two are the most popular. So why would you bring that up? But yeah, they're businessmen, more businessmen by age. I mean, I saw some people trying to put up Haney's age compared to Mayweather and then put the record there as like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And here it is. Age 24, age 23. Mayweather's 24. This was DAZN, actually. 26-0 versus 26-0. Floyd had more knockouts, but the first world title was 20, and it wasn't until Mayweather 21. World titles won. So basically, kind of even them out. They were both 26-0 at the same age, basically. And actually, Haney got his title first at 20 instead of 21. Look who and look how Haney got his title compared to fighting the lineal guy who had only never lost at the weight. His only loss was to Oscar De La Hoya at 135. We're talking about Geraldo Hernandez. So give me a break. You're going to mention the lineal guy at 130 and compare that to Haney? This is DAZN doing it. I remember seeing that. And then there was a Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson's better at 23 or whatever at this age than Mayweather. Are you out of your fucking mind? It's so funny to use Oscar De La Hoya and Mayweather as they were businessmen more than dude. Yeah, of course they were businessmen because they created a ton of revenue, dude. You better be a businessman, woman, at that point. But look at the resume, dude. And I know you're gonna say, and actually someone just already did. Oh, but Oscar never won the big fights, dude. He fought Bernard Hopkins. I thought he beat Trinidad. He fought Mosley. You could have gave him the second fight in Mosley. Like, sure, he lost to Mayweather. Pacquiao, he took an IV in the locker room and was eating a power bar on the way into the ring. You think he was really 145? You think that was a healthy weight for him? Like, to sit there, Oscar fought so many dudes. I don't care if he lost most of them. I mean, this guy fought everyone, dude. His last fight was against a peaking Manny Pacquiao. Are you guys that silly? Like, blame it on Mayweather and Oscar because some guys don't fight some guys and they're businessmen. Go look at their resume, guys. Get the fuck out of here. Jeez Louise, you guys are haters, dude. Man. Wow. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Enjoy the fights. Hopefully we get some bangers.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight, let's say you fight 4 or 5 years of